I'm happy to welcome everybody here and excited about what we're discussing tonight. Hey, there he is. Okay, so on this work meeting, we're going to turn a lot of time over to Jake. It looks like you're up and going, Jake.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start right with you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Planning Commission, City Council, for hosting this together. I think it's fantastic. We have a good discussion tonight. And I hope when we leave, there's basically three options with short-term rentals. Option A, continue to not do anything that we're already doing. So that is an option. The city, there's no ordinances against it, but there's also nothing for it or managing it. So that certainly is an option. Option B could be an ordinance that regulates short-term rentals but allows it. And then option C could be an ordinance that regulates it but not allowing it. So really kind of a do nothing, allow it, or not allow it. Ty, do you have anything else before I keep going as we begin this discussion?
Other than, isn't there something about this state law that says you can't restrict it entirely?
No,
No,
that was never passed.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
There was a proposed legislation a couple of years ago saying that cities had to allow short-term rentals in up to 80% of the residential zoning. That didn't pass, but just be warned, at some point the state legislature could require cities to allow short-term rentals.
Yeah, what I recall is that you had to allow it somewhere in some zone. You just couldn't say we're not having any short-term rentals in the city, period. But I might be wrong.
What that
was
didn't
that.
get passed.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's enough mistakes for one.
No, that's good.
I'll check back into
There is some state law, and I will get to that though. You
Okay.
So you are on that there is state law for short-term rental. Okay. So short-term rental, this is from state code, means a residential unit or any portion of a residential unit that the owner of record or the leasee of the residential unit offers for occupancy for fewer than 30 days, consecutive days. So whenever you think short-term rental, think fewer than 30 consecutive days. 30 and more would be a long-term rental. Any questions on that? No?
Does anything restrict long-term rentals in your own home?
Well, that's per city ordinance. I mean, that's a whole different ball of wax, but I don't think the city prohibits long-term rentals.
Just maybe clarify from my mind, short-term rentals, is that those we see renting out a room in their own home? Or you're talking a standalone house where they rent the house short-term?
All of the above,
All the both situations.
however you want to look at it.
It can be an Airbnb.
Airbnb is a short-term rental. Absolutely. VRBO, Stay Casa, there's all kinds of ones, KSL. So
Hey, Jake, what's the difference between a short-term rental and a boarding house? According to state code.
well, anything that's less than 30 days would be. So a boarding house could be. Yeah. Gary, we do have a spot up here if you want to sit by me. Sure.
He's pretty scary too.
No,
So, Ro, what's a boarding house?
So to me, in my mind, a boarding house would be a house that's either renting rooms, renting space in a room, renting a couch. I mean, almost like a dog boarding place
And
would be
and
a
that-
boarding house to
that could
me.
be short-term rental if it's less than 30 days. So Gary, a couple things I've covered. I'm hoping tonight we leave with direction on 3 options. A, we continue to do nothing, and that's okay. B, the city decides to allow short-term rentals, a little bit of direction on where to go with that. Or C, the city decides not to do short-term rentals. Because currently we're kind of in this nimbo, this in-between land. Okay, and then this is all I could find on state code for short-term rentals, just that it's less than 30 days. And Ty asked about legislation that required short-term rentals. I was reading about that and it looks like that didn't pass. Okay,
But you can't enforce against short-term rentals either by using.
and that's the next point is state law does not allow cities to prohibit advertising of short-term rentals. So just because somebody's listing it on Airbnb, we can't go bust them for it.
Correct.
Now, if the neighbor was complaining or there was some other way that zoning enforcement came about, then that's probably okay. But just because they're listing it on VRBO and Airbnb and those kind of things, we can't regulate against them. Tony?
Have a discussion on what he is talking about.
Well-
Because I'm not talking about a short-term rental. I'm talking about somebody that is renting out rooms or a couch on a long-term basis.
We're gonna get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay,
We'll get to that.
okay, good.
So, okay. So,
Can I just make one comment?
yes, please.
Okay, the first option that you indicated, which is to do nothing. A lot of cities are in that same position where it's just not become a big enough problem that they decide to do something. Layton's one of them. We just don't have that many that it's become a problem. So the way we regulate those is just simply through the nuisance ordinance. So anytime it becomes a nuisance or people are parking in front of mailboxes or you've got people parking on the street during the winter time when you're trying to plow. We use the nuisance ordinance essentially to address that. Noise, if they have a party. I don't know why anyone would want to party in Layton, but if they did want to party in Layton, we would address that through the noise ordinance. So even though to do nothing is, appears to do nothing about them. If it's a problem, you regulate it. If it's not a problem, you've got another way of regulating through the ordinances that you have in place. And you pretty much have all of those in place, so.
And I did look and what I saw on Airbnb was, I think it was 4 homes. If you look at Airbnb.com, you'll see 4 homes in Morgan. One is the ski house, has 5 bedrooms, lots of beds, pretty nice. Good reviews. And then others are bedrooms or other things. So on Airbnb, there's 4. I didn't go through the other websites, but just kind of give you an idea.
There's 3 listed on the VRBO website that are not listed on the Airbnb.
Oh, different
website.
ones. So we're looking at least 7 or so. Okay. So one thing I also want to show you is another option. This is a screenshot here, and this is we're going to get to this in a second, but so this is a development in Laverkin that's night short-term rental, but an entire community. And this is something we'll mention later on, but essentially this whole little development there is available for nightly rental, these little tiny homes, casitas. So that's an option too. And we're going to get to that. So what I want to do now, you don't always hear this in presentations, but I want everybody to pull out their phone and we're going to have a group discussion via phone polling. This will give everybody a chance to weigh in on their opinion
Just take it with your phone.
Yeah.
Your picture. Up to that QR code on the screen.
Good to get a-
Let's take a picture. So your camera's gonna recognize, so you zoom in on it. It's
You're gonna get a.
so you can zoom in on what's on
If you
screen.
just pull up in your camera, it'll send a link. So just.
It'll recognize,
So
that
just
it's
click
it'll
on
give you
it.
a link to a website.
You don't have to put your name.
You changed.
Go back to the QR. code
Okay,
first.
I will in just 1 second. It's gonna be up here. Okay.
Skip.
So
Don't
let's
worry
wait till I'm pulling the QR code back up. I want to get everybody on there. This is an all-in
Never,
activity.
this is my first, everybody.
That's taking you to a
It's the
website.
future, Mayor.
Most menus are that way now.
Yeah, mine.
Your camera. You can also go to that website, thepollev.com /JYoung 330.
It should have a little scanner. that should go.
It should
We
be.
have this QR scanner on it. Not getting it.
No, yours is-
You have to have a QR scanner on.
Am I supposed
Justin.
Cameras,
No,
Your camera.
your camera.
Something popped up.
Yeah, you had it.
We had it.
You had it.
Oh, come on, baby.
Highlighted the touch. Keep going in.
Just accepted the cookie policy, so I'm going for a snickerdoodle.
While he's doing that, maybe I'll sneak around the way Ty.
We're supposed to put our name on this, Jake.
No, you don't need to.
Good to see you. Oh,
It really is.
Except the yellow part.
I wanted it to be anonymous, so
That's the yellow
hopefully it
part.
continues that way.
I think you know how I feel about certain things.
That's okay.
So did I.
The presentation's almost done, actually. Yeah.
Good way to do it.
Should I just go to the website?
The league uses this.
I got you, babe.
So that's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm gonna go get me a Snickers.
Okay, are we all on? Okay, you all passed the technology test. Good job.
Well, Teresa did. And I
Yep.
don't want to join that technology, by the way. I'm too great.
Okay, so you should be, the first question should come up. Okay. You're waiting for me. Okay, there we go. First question is, have you stayed in a short-term rental over the last 2 years?
Anywhere.
Anywhere? And if it was 3 years, just say yes as well. It's just, have you had personal experience staying in a Airbnb, VRBO, any of the above?
We don't get to see names.
No. That's
And
what I.
was it in Morgan City? Where?
Okay, who are we missing here?
Did you guys vote for it?
Vote no. Always no.
So you didn't stay in an Airbnb?
Oh, I have. A lot.
Well, then you gotta,
Yeah.
I didn't get into your phone, right?
Oh,
And I would have happily voted for you. but-
okay,
And I lost it.
No, and if you haven't stayed in an Airbnb, have you left the county over the last 3 years?
That's the best option sometimes.
Yeah.
Want to start listening out where I've stayed in Airbnb.
People might just never go anywhere, right?
Okay,
okay. Everybody get a chance to answer that question?
I answered it, but I lost it. I think I'll be sent by Teresa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not embarrassed to say. it.
Okay. I'm gonna proceed here. Idea. Do you need it again? The QR code's up in the corner. Second again.
Mhm. Go ahead, I'll catch up.
Okay.
Yes.
Generally speaking, how has your experience been? So if you've stayed in one, if you didn't stay in one, you don't need to answer. But if you did stay in one over the last 2 or 3 years, How has your experience been, generally speaking? Okay, anybody else? Any more time? Okay, looks like about 70% highly positive, 23 somewhat positive, and about 8% neutral. Okay, this is an open-ended question. So type in, what are the potential negatives of short-term rentals?
As a guest or?
Yeah, that's it.
From a city lens, okay? So you represent the city, you work for the city, you're on elected officials, you know, what are the negative impacts that could affect the city? And you can do a full paragraph or a single word.
How about if we're just putting something in here that we've heard maybe from cities that have,
Don't make it difficult for me.
okay.
So we submit our answer, right?
Yep. Okay, so some of these are, I'll just read them as they come in. Parking, garbage and noise. Parking, neighbor concerns, who's there? What's going on there? Becomes a party house. Loss of community culture. Nuisances, noise, parking, etc. Impact to current residents and how do we enforce regulations? Parking, noise, parties, parking, complaints from neighbors, neighbors' noise, traffic, security concerns, parking, increased rent, perceptions of current residents not in my backyard, noise, parking, deterioration of property, neighborhood safety, competes with hotels. There was a Deseret News article just on Airbnbs today on the main page. New York City is pushing back a little bit on short-term rentals. One thing that's not mentioned here that I want to bring up is it does take housing stock out of long-term housing. You know, if a townhome or a house is rented as Airbnb, then it's not available for purchase or long-term rental for a resident. So there is a concern in some communities, particularly at Park City or Springdale at the mouth of Zion National Park. It's taken away stock for long-term housing. So there's one more as well. Anything else anybody want to add to here? We'll do a little more discussion later on, but
Well, I know of one that long-term housing in Moab, they have an extreme problem with people coming in, buying their houses, turning them to Airbnbs, and the people in Moab don't have a place to live. They honestly don't. They're having to go to now like Grand Junction because the cost of housing's gone through the roof because they're Airbnb. And so a lot of these communities you talk about, I know that Moab's a huge problem now. Because they're one of our customers. And so I talked to those guys that are on the staff in city and they're going, what do we do?
yeah,
We have nowhere to go.
workforce housing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not only that, but it could do the opposite of that. It could take a quiet neighborhood and turn it into a place where nobody wants to live anymore. And so the value of your home just went down $100,000, $200,000.
True. Or it could go up because the demand. Okay. Now, let's see. Back to this. Oh, those are in there. Okay. What are the potential positives of short-term rentals? Income, of course, the owners who own that, renting out, getting income, sales tax dollars in form of lodging, additional income, tourism dollars, bringing people to town, spending money on restaurants, shopping, really kind of maybe hitting up Commercial Street, increased tourism, tax revenue, more overnight accommodations, overnight accommodation inventory. Morgan just has the one hotel. Tourism dollars spent in the city, more people spending money in the city, increased to local business, tourism increased visitation by families. Also, guests want a beautiful lawn, increased tourism, economic benefits, local commerce, rental income. A lot of times, Airbnbs are used for anytime there's like like, of course, conferences, but if you're having a tournament for soccer, baseball, lacrosse, all of that, they want lodging for that kind of thing. So definitely you need bigger lodging for that kind of thing. Last winter, I rode on the ski lift at Snow Basin with some people that were staying in Morgan and asked them all about it without getting addresses and hunting them down. But they were from Seattle and they were great people and they were really liking to be in Morgan rather than Park City or Salt Lake. And I don't blame them.
Jake, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
I just put that one up there that said TR tax. Is Airbnbs or VRBOs, are they, can you collect TR tax from them, transient room tax from them?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And I think when it goes through Airbnb and VRBO, that does it automatically. Obviously, someone's putting it on KSL or wherever, then that may not be happening. But when it's done properly through a website, then it is. Homes are kept up, upkeep of properties, sales tax revenue a city didn't need to spend money on. So it just came.
A lot of them are interrelated. I mean,
Yeah, certainly a lot of dollars. And Morgan's a great place. I could see a lot of people wanting to come here, a different kind of vacation, a little more out of the way, unique character. Of course, the ski resorts, the river. The other day when we did the bridge dedication, there was a whole group of people on Commercial Street that just run the river that were all eating at the restaurants. And so a lot of opportunities there. Okay. Now, this is just kind of an open, well, it's a straightforward question. Do you support ordinances allowing short-term rentals to be regulated and allowed in Morgan City? So this says regulated and allowed. And of course, this is an open question. There's all kinds of things that could go into an ordinance in different places, but this is basically kind of saying, should it be allowed and should there be an ordinance of some type? Did everybody get a chance to answer? Okay. Looks like we're about 73% yes in some fashion and 27% undecided, which is all three are good answers. But certainly there's a lot of things that need to be figured out as well as part of that undecided. Okay. If Morgan City approves ordinances for short-term rentals, do you support setting a high bar for property management, addressing nuisances, licensing, parking, etc.? So if it did happen, do you want significant regulations managing it?
That's a question on Layton. So you don't have an ordinance to regulate it, but it is allowed.
Is it promoted in any way? Is there any like flyers or websites or anything?
No, We came to the conclusion, the first question we asked, even prior to all these questions, are the same ones I ask at the legislature every year. Is there a reason for regulating it? Because there's a cost to regulation. And if you're going to actually put into place an ordinance that regulates short-term rentals, somebody's got to do it. And somebody's got to enforce it, and somebody's got to find people when they don't do it right, and that type of thing. So the first question was, is there a need to do it? And the council at that time, we counted the numbers and they were higher than yours because Layton's bigger, but they weren't significant enough. You know, people come into Layton to golf at Davis and Valley View, and they come in to sometimes ski at Powder Mountain and Snow Basin. And, you know, so it's that type of thing that they come in for. Or the Air Force Base is a big influence on our short-term rentals. Somebody will come in, they'll fly in and they'll stay. They want a place to stay in. So the city didn't want to prevent that from happening because we support the base. But the first question is, you know, do you need it? And are you willing to enforce it if you put one of these in place? And so Layton decided no.
Gary, along those lines,
Pardon?
along those lines, Stephanie passed out some ordinances from couple of different cities, but I found it interesting. Garden City, for example, a new application when they originally set the ordinance was $300. And they later updated that to $1,200. And the reason given was because of the cost of enforcement. All of that went to enforcement, but there's a 3 or 4-fold cost to enforce depending on as to what they originally thought it was going to cost. So speaking to your comment there that it is expensive to regulate, that's maybe a reason why a good reason that Layton City doesn't do that.
Good comments. Anybody else not get a chance to answer this? Okay. Looks like we're,
I have a,
No, I didn't answer that. The issue, you know which button you're talking about here. I mean, like, for example, no, they're not important. I mean, I'm just saying that Layton is a very interesting example. You pull it up and there's about 20 Airbnbs that pop up. Would Morgan have any more than that right away over the years? And this whole idea of the cost of regulation is, I mean, we're a little shorthanded as it is, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, if Aaron wants to go regulate it and be the enforcer, I'd support that.
the library can do it.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough.
I think, but anyway, it's just an interesting thing. So
I have a comment, but I want to wait until after because I don't want to influence answers.
of course,
Justin, the cost would be paid for by these fees, renewal fees, application fees, and so forth. And you look at Ogden City, they hire a third-party component to enforce the regulation.
And you're looking at Garden City, it's Bear Lake, and if you go up there,
It's a different environment.
Airbnb, almost every other home.
Sure.
Regulations.
95% in Garden City is actually short-term rentals or people who are just there for the summer. They only have 5% population in the winter.
And it's been that way for a long time.
For a
I mean,
long time.
They've, you know, they've always been a lot of cabins kind
So,
of
so
thing.
Dave,
So people figure out a way to make money with their family cabin that was just sitting there.
That's really how they support their
so
economy.
Dave, on those fees,
Mhm.
who was charged that? The owners of the Airbnb?
Yes, the application was right now is $1,200 for new application. A renewal, which is annually, is $600. And it started out at 150. But again, the point I would make is it costs money to enforce.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's upfront money. That's not
Mhm.
from residents.
And
that's
paid by
from-
the owner of the
Yeah, okay.
rental.
so is that an annual renewal?
The 600 is, yeah. So every year, if you want to keep your short-term rental license, you pay $600.
So 1,200 initial and 600 out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, may I ask a question? So if you're not regulating it, someone you don't know is actually who is doing it. How are you, back to my point, how are you gaining any TR tax? If they're just wildcatting it, so to speak.
Are we seeing do you get a check from TR Lodging that comes
Yeah.
through?
We have 7 different outlets that pay TRT tax and only one of them's the hotel. Well, 2 of them are associated with the hotel because one is a hotel booking, like hotels.com, but we have, the other ones are for Airbnb and VRBO. And then there's another one called like, it's an LLC of someone, like it has a unique name, but someone created an LLC locally to do.
Okay, so there you go.
But I mean, if it was not regulated, could I just suddenly turn my home into an Airbnb?
If you put it on Airbnb and VRBO, then they would require you to pay taxes. But if you just did it by word of mouth, then no. Okay, one more question. True. An accountant or CPA may be correcting some people's. Okay. So make sure you scroll down on this one. And this one, I think, allows you to pick five short-term rental policies or ideas that you would support. You know, an apartment, a townhome, part of a home occupied, non-owner occupied.
Haven't got it.
So you select one.
only selecting one.
Not allowing you to select
No.
multiple.
No.
No.
Dang it. I said it to do that because I was thinking about that one.
I still got the old question on here.
Okay. The additional one was what I showed you, and maybe this is part of our discussion too, is a short-term rental community. That's the other one I added. As part of that, what I showed before is that that's an option as well. So at least 6 options here, all of a single family home, renting part of a home with requiring someone to be there. Some cities require that. North Salt Lake requires owner occupancy for short-term rental. Sandy requires owner occupancy with short-term rental. Okay. Pick the one you like the most.
So
So this one we could talk about and even do. Maybe I can, while you're talking, I'm gonna see if it'll let me add a new one. And I'll put it in there.
Can I add some
Yeah,
more context? So, one thing on the regulation, I don't want to lost on how much self-regulation happens inside of an Airbnb. So I own an Airbnb property, not in Morgan. And
Because he clicked it off.
the amount of work that you have to do to maintain the property, to make sure that the neighbors don't complain, all the things you have to do to keep a good rating basically forces you to do a good job. Or otherwise, people don't book it. And it's really interesting, for example, like what owners will do to get a 5-star. So my wife usually manages most of it, and she bends over backwards. Any complaint, any sort of, if we get a report of anything, an Airbnb actually, if they get a call, so a neighbor is bugged about a next door neighbor that's doing an Airbnb, the neighbor calls Airbnb, and Airbnb will then notify you, like, this was just reported by somebody else. And if you get so many strikes against you in any of those platforms, they don't promote you. You don't get the rating you need to. There's all this stuff that really lets a lot of that regulation happen by itself. So it's really interesting to see how, whether it's economics or whatever, it drives the behavior that we may need and want without adding additional regulations on.
Rated by 1-star, 2-star, 3.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, you want to become a super host.
You could become a super host. That's right. My wife got a 4-star one time. It devastated her. She was, oh man, it was interesting to see how that played out. But my point is that the regulation of what someone has to do in their home to attract people and to continue to attract people to make it worth their time to actually have an Airbnb or any short-term rental is quite substantial. So just because we might regulate something it might be unnecessary because it's already happened by itself. And so in my opinion, I think we need to be careful with adding complexity when we don't need to add it if it's.
Justin,
And I think-
the home that your rental is in, do they have a short-term ordinance?
No,
Okay.
I don't think. Like, my opinion is, I don't think our concern is those types of homes. It's the homes that are like KSL and word of mouth and Craigslist and stuff like that. Those are the ones that I'm seeing the issue with.
And I also have a comment whenever we're done with the regulation part.
I'm sure you do.
Well, so I'll just say it, because I don't really want to have too much of an influence, but I have a really hard time with regulation, the term regulation in city, because I view everything that we do as a service. So by the word permitting, we say we recognize it's a thing, we permit it, right? And then we give somebody the path forward to be able to do that appropriately. I'm sorry. This is really emotional. I'm just kidding. I had something in my throat. I know. And I almost went into a whole another spiel, but anyway. So it protects, it gives you assurances, if that's something that you're gonna do, that if a neighbor does complain or is out of control about nuisance ordinance or just hates the fact that you're renting your house out, you have the ability to say, wait a minute, I'm permitted. I've gone through all of the steps. The other thing it does is it allows the city to even know, right? It kind of forms this, so like dogs, it's like, what's the right number of dogs? Well, we don't know, but if you want to license your dog, great. If you don't, we don't do much about it until it bites somebody, right? Or if you have 5 of them and we say, well, we've only permitted 2. So all it is a backstop. And so when the question about regulation and how heavy you want to get, I have a hard time with that versus saying, do we want to offer the service to permit it and allow it and then say, here's the minimum requirements, just do it appropriately, right? Because if we don't know about it, like back to Rose's comment, it's, oh, right now we have a nuisance. We have a party at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? We get called, then who do we call?
You.
Well, they call me. Who do I call? Who does roll call, right? And that's all we're saying is just say, oh, nope, this is the owner. We have their information on file or the property manager, right? Instead of knocking on, random people's, and I agree too, they self-regulate, but that's just a twisted view of how I see the word regulation within city, because there's a ton of stuff that happens, right? With or without us. But when you buy a home, when you do all of these things, you want some assurances that there's no recourse because you've followed the procedures. There's going to be others that don't follow the procedures. And I don't know what to say about that. They're leaving themselves out there a little bit as far as if they have a neighbor to neighbor issue or a safety complaint or, some other thing. So that's all.
That approach gives the city the opportunity to educate those who are choosing to do it through, business license and things like that, when it's a permitted service.
Permitted use, just to.
And that.
Or or like that other route where we just say, we don't even recognize it as a thing. It's your property. Just
Really
don't.
Make sure the nuisance ordinance is exactly.
Yep, make the nuisance ordinance stringent enough that we that we have something to act on. And so anyway, I don't want to get us way off into the weeds. I was just trying to say why we might want to consider.
This is the last one I want to ask. This one should allow you to choose all of the ones. So if any short-term rental of these types, pick which you would support and see if it works.
Justin, can I ask you a question? So I know you have do you I guess you're permitted to do that, or do you, how do you establish that with the community you're in, or do you, or?
That one, the place we have doesn't have, it, but we did establish an LLC that takes care of all that, which has been registered with that.
One again.
All right, you just answered my question, and if you have established an LLC, that, okay,
But we did that because it allowed, the revenue and expenses, you can use that for tax purposes.
Sure.
So that's how we chose to do it. So people don't do it that way.
okay.
Yeah, I can't get another one.
So, Mayor, I believe that these are not exempt from business licensing. In other words, you've got to have a business license to run one of these. The city. And so if you do have a violation, you can go through the business license process and in addressing the violation. That's the way we do it.
So for business license, and if you don't have a code,
If you don't have a code,
if you have no short term, so. And yet they should be licensed when they rent,
there's still a business.
there's no.
Mhm. Yeah.
So-
If, under our code, if they make more than a certain amount of revenue a year, they're a business, whatever they are. Except the lemonade stands and the scouts. We don't.
$5.
Unless it's a corn stand, correct?
Or a corn stand.
Yeah,
Lemonade.
I don't know those people.
Car stand in the church.
If you haven't yet, take a look at this one. Just be interesting to see what people, what types of Airbnb they would support, and it should allow you to pick all of
I
them.
just got one, Jake.
If it's only letting you choose one. Oh, you got to choose several? Okay,
Oh, yeah, I wasn't able to pick any.
okay,
Between the two.
okay. Thank you. All right, this is my last slide here. Staff looked at this and said, okay, if short-term rental is going to happen, what are some suggestions behind it? This is something that Stephanie, Teresa, and Ty worked on, and I looked at as well. And I'm just going to read these. Allow short-term rentals wherever residential use is permitted, not by zone. So if it's a permitted use, then it's a permitted use anywhere. And I do think it should, if it is allowed, then it's much better as a permitted use than a conditional use. I don't think we want everybody coming to do one of these to the planning commission, making their argument and it being conditional, although that could happen. But it's not good policy or good planning. Require inspection of rental unit by building inspector and fire marshal for safety. And then I put down there, it could be yearly, biannually, or initially once. Property management or owner 15 to 30 minutes away from property, available 24/7. Occupancy 2 per room plus an extra 2 to 4 in a unit. Max occupancy 14 to 16. Parking 1 car per 4 people. No on-street parking allowed. And then I added 1 car per bedroom. We do have the noise ordinance, garbage sanitary conditions. Possibly require 2 cans at rental. Require site plan for unit layout and parking, just making sure they think ahead in terms of accommodating. State the use that's allowed, short-term, long-term, ADU, bed and breakfast, room rentals, boarding rooms. And then request a copy of the rental agreement. Show no subletting, so renters can't rent to other renters. Time frame for rentals, following all the city ordinances. Then rentals will be regulated through code enforcement. Non-compliance or non-payment of fines will result in revocation of rental license. Ty, anything you want to add to that? That was something.
Nope,
Okay,
just a big brain dump of stuff that felt like was semi-enforceable or attainable. Just saying, here's what you do to comply if you want to go through the process. So nothing to,
So can
I
I?
don't think
throw-
anybody's super passionate about any of the items. We just made a
I just
recommendation.
have one comment. How much time do you have, Ro, to enforce
I'm-
all this?
Well, like. I do code enforcement, then I inspect, then I code enforce, and then I inspect. So like I schedule my days around that. I wanted to throw a wrench in the gear for a second, that on our municipal code, we don't allow boarding or rooming houses in any of our zones except for ag and RM15 zoning. And that's a conditional use in those two zones.
What would be the I'll go back to this, what would be the definition of a boarding house then?
It's usually renting out rooms,
Essentially room rental,
room rentals. Without the breakfast,
pardon?
without the breakfast,
So,
without the breakfast.
Mayor, also, if I could, I did code enforcement too, and on the nuisance, it's all regulated through nuisance. So however, like what Justin was saying, if they're working on their ratings, there wouldn't be a ton of nuisance complaints, but that versus how much time you spend on a long-term rental that's in terrible condition. You get a couple problem properties and you're spending 90% of your code enforcement time
Yeah.
on one that you just have a super difficult time. Just when you have a bad renter for short term, they're gone in 2 days. If you have a big problem, I mean, I don't know how many rounds I've gone on some of them, right? That it's like clear to the end of the fine schedule and months of effort. So
Another question I have is if we allow short-term rentals and we force the rental property owner to get a permit and a license for it. On those code enforcements, are we gonna be able to just send them a fine in the mail? Versus having to spend 3 weeks trying to track somebody down? We have a permit, we have a name, we have an address. Can we just send a fine to them in the mail? This is what happened this day, this time. You know, they would know who their tenant was, obviously.
well, the big problem is back to our code enforcement. You have 10 days to comply,
Right.
right? So you have an issue if you're doing it through nuisance and they've swapped out. Right? There's really, you give notice. So the property owner would have to have consecutive issues before they got their first fine. They'd have to have multiple bad experiences before, like over and over, you're not addressing this, however you're gonna address it. So it's not like every single time you have a complaint, a letter goes out. But I do think we have that ability to send it by letter. I did certified mail. Just to acknowledge receipt a couple of times when I did code enforcement.
Couldn't you even in the application though, is when they apply to be a short-term rental landlord? Or it states, if there is a violation, like police are called out or a complaint against you, you can send it to Airbnb and verbal and so many happen to you, then your license is suspended. And you've got a documentation from the sheriff's office, obviously. Code enforcement is now on an online complaint form, so they're also a permanent record.
Well, another thing too is, like I said earlier, I don't think the ones that we're concerned about are the ones that are listed on the websites, Airbnb, VRBO. It's the ones that are underground. Like, I know of one right now that I've been to her house probably, I would say 8 times in a year for different things. And we have the 10-day deal. Within 10 days, they fix it, then it's the next complaint, then it's the next complaint. It's not the same complaint over and over and over. It's a new complaint.
So Ro, is
How
that
do
a
we
short,
regulate that?
is that a long-term rental that you're,
It is a,
there's a short?
I would call it a boarding house,
So
to be honest
short-term,
with you.
yeah, more short.
because it's
People are coming and
spaced in
going.
rooms, and you know, my guess is there's bunk beds in each room and they're just renting space out.
Term rentals are going to require either a management company or, not unlike Justin, an owner that's available around the clock and a response in some cases in as quick as 15 minutes. Typically, though, about an hour.
The
If
one
there
I'm
were-
talking about, the homeowner actually lives in the home.
Okay, but if you had the short-term rental ordinance in place and that homeowner would have the responsibility to respond within the hour and correct instead of the 10-day period, 2 or 3 of those, and you no longer have a license.
Yeah, and that would be nice if we could regulate that.
Mhm.
You know, if we put that in our
Yeah, that'd be a benefit of
ordinance.
having
have
an
that.
ordinance.
Like he says, if you had that ordinance, you go up there and she is renting, well, do you license? No, okay, you have 10 days to license, get it all done, and then she starts her complaints there. Yeah, for example, you have a parking issue. She takes care of the parking issue every time she gets a complaint. And then it returns in 2 weeks, then you're back to a parking issue again.
Yep.
Where if she's not licensed, she can't run
Yeah.
her business.
But she's not licensed now.
Yeah.
And she's running her
She's still
that's
running it.
So what would change? What's our recourse?
So
Right.
if we get the ordinance, we can do something about it, but if we don't, it's all regulated
It's
by
just
the nuisance
nuisance.
ordinance only.
She got a license. So can you go make her get a license?
Oh, I think it's cash under the table with this one, to be honest with you. Yeah, like I agree with you. I think any business, if you're renting a corner room, I think you need to have a permit for it or a license. But how can we regulate that if you go to her house and say, hey, we saw this, we can't, so now we have to hope that somebody tells us that she's renting space. And then we can go at it that way, but she's not gonna come clean and say, yeah, I'm renting space out. She knows she's doing wrong. Every time I go there, she knows she's doing wrong, but like that's the hardest part with that one is everything's different every time I go out there. And we all know, everybody that lives in the neighborhood knows she's renting space out. There's always 20 cars parked in the street every single night. Next morning, the 20 cars are gone. Next night, 20 cars are back. And our parking ordinance is 48 hours. So the sheriff's office can go over and tag paint, put paint on the wheels and they'll be moved the next day. So how do you regulate that if it's under the table? We can't use the internet to catch them. We have to have them basically tell us, yeah, I'm renting rooms out.
So it sounds like you'd have that problem whether you had a rental ordinance or not
I think so with
Yeah.
her.
with that one.
Yeah, I really do.
Solve that.
Is there just one bad actor in the city doing this to that degree?
We got another one the other day that just come up. But it's on VRBO. So I don't know if they're gonna regulate it a little bit better. There's a couple in town, but like there's not 30 of them.
Find out about it because of complaints.
The neighbor calls, yeah. Hey, we're seeing cars from Oregon, Washington, Idaho show up and they're gone. And then the next week it's Kansas and Oklahoma.
That could be a complaint because don't know what they're doing too, because you're in a small town. People want to know what every neighbor is doing. So is it a problem that they were loud and noisy just that one night? Then that's something if we had that regulation.
Or is it just a bunch of strange cars coming in?
Yeah, or is it just they're complaining about strange cars? But say, for example, the sheriff was called because of allowed, you know, a party that night, then if you had an ordinance, you put it on their license as a violation and turn it into the VRBO or whatever would help.
If they're not licensed, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but if you get a complaint though, then you have the right to go to that and say, are you, we're under the impression, by the way, your violation was that you're running a short-term rental and you don't have a license. Come to the city and get licensed.
What if that homeowner says, oh, I'm not renting anything out. These are my friends.
Well, and that could happen,
Well, I know that would happen with this one.
but not every one of them. And it's not gonna, for example, the one that just happened, you know, that, you know, if they're having a party, well, we're just renting this house.
Right.
Right there, the person's not gonna say, this is my home and we're just having a
Yeah.
family party. They can say, hey, we're renting this house of our, you know, off of a website. Right there, he's admitted that he's done. Now you can find out if that person is licensed or not. So there is.
So,
some
so
ways
I
around.
like Gary's comment earlier where he said that Layton City allows it, but they don't have they don't have an ordinance on it. And they just use the nuisance. The problem we have is our code enforcement is the 10 days. So if we don't allow those, can we change the 10-day rule? Especially on like short-term rentals, VRBOs, Airbnbs, boarding houses. We obviously don't allow on our code, but yet we have one. I know we have at least one. Is there any way we can handle that instead of like parking? Parking's a 10-day deal on our ordinance, but technically our other ordinance, it says 48 hours. But if it's a code enforcement problem, it's 10 days.
Oops. Lost my computer.
So can we create a more in-depth nuisance code?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is a good thing. That is, what is the problem? Yeah. And let's address the problem. And if the problem is shortening the time period for these rentals versus cutting your weeds, yeah, you can do that kind of thing. You know, you can shorten that time period for this type of thing because it's a different kind of nuisance. It's a kind of nuisance that has to be resolved right away.
Right.
To Ty's point, it's not a prohibition as much as it is a permitting or, you know, regulating that type of use. Within regulation is a bad word. It's the one he doesn't like to use, but it's taking people down a path, showing them how to do it properly. And if they don't do it properly, they don't deserve the right to be there. So yes, yeah, identify the issues that you want to take care of, and then let's change your code to do it, to address the issues.
I personally like what I'm hearing right now. I'm surprised Layton City doesn't have it. Because of their size. But I like that if there is a complaint, that the complaint can be addressed. So
The one thing about that is it's not shepherding people into the right way to do it. It's basically trying to eliminate some of the worst case scenarios and that. So that's the counter view is one, do you want to shepherd them the right way through an ordinance? And then, you know, application, permitting, all that, or do you want to just try to eliminate all the negative consequences through nuisance ordinance?
well, I go back on to what Kai explained, that we are getting a little bit of revenue from the ones that do it right. And I had a friend that had a Airbnb in Monroe, Utah. And I think it's 3 complaints and you're out. So one complaint that he had, the only time he ever had a complaint, there wasn't a hairdryer. That's because the people that were there before stole it. So he was told that's a strike. And so they went and got a hairdryer and put it back in. But it's fairly strict and stringent how if they're doing it right, it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a city ordinance. But the problem you have is he had a call that said, hey, I want to rent your place. Can we take it off of Airbnb and I'll just rent you and pay you under the table? And he said, no. But that's the hardest part. So if we make the nuisance ordinance or the complaint department more strict through ordinance, then we can enforce it a little better. Is that right or wrong?
Well, but that doesn't require it to be on Airbnb or to be taxes and all that. What you're talking about, I mean, the nuisance part is just parking, noise, all of that kind of thing. It's not necessarily making sure that they are paying taxes and they are going through the front door and getting a business permit and all that.
So, one other, just on that bullet point, one of the things that we talked about, and I'm not sure where, or if it shows up, but just by getting a business license, we can also prompt us to let the county assessor know they have a business license. It's a short-term rental. Now they're paying 100% property tax for that, because in Utah, if you have a long-term rental, you still qualify for the primary resident exemption. Does that make sense? Is everyone following?
Say that again.
So,
if it's a
so
short-term-
if you stay 6 months and 1 day, like if I rent my house to you for over 6 months, I qualify for the residential property tax exemption,
Okay,
and I only pay 55% of my property tax.
okay,
If I come in and get a business license, because we recognize it, and we say, here's the path forward, come get a business license. With that business license process, we can go over to the assessor's office and say, here's our list of licensed short-term rentals. And they can reevaluate that assessment and charge you 100%,
100%.
right? 100% property tax. So we've talked about the TRT and the sales tax and the benefit, but just in a matter of equity, if they're happening with or without us, that's just one of those elements, right? Like I have rentals, they're long-term, but I pay 100% property tax. So, anyway,
They're
it's
like
an
considered
equity
a
thing.
second
It's an
home.
equity thing for the, most taxpayers,
So they're like considered a second home. They're
like a
taxed,
commercial
Yeah.
property is
taxed at
taxed at
100%.
100%. So anyway, that was just a side note. That doesn't really change the world, but
But that is a consideration.
yeah, I would think.
What do you do with somebody like you're talking about, who's not gonna get a business license anyway?
And they're the outliers and we still continue to struggle with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think this ordinance changes that one dynamic at all. And then we just go to work on better enforcement code, Yeah, and that's kind of the back and forth, right? You got administrative, you got code, you apply it. If it doesn't work, you come back to council and say, here's what I'm struggling with. Can we,
Tighten it down.
yeah, can we tighten it down? And that's when it gets updated. So.
I had a little bit of a pitch from the tourism side, because I put that on the county side. I just, one thing to look at is, what do we want to promote in Morgan?
Mhm.
And a lot of what we hear is like, we want people to come here, spend their money and leave. Okay. There's not a better way for people to come stay at a short-term rental, spend their money and leave. Plus the type of people that we really invite into Morgan, it's families. So when a family comes from out of town, they either have to usually rent, if they'd have to rent 2 hotel rooms or 3 for their family size, or they get a nice Airbnb. There's not enough of them to accommodate that. So then they just shove into everyone else's, house. And then you got a parking problem anyway. So I look at it from that perspective of inviting, the type of people that we want to have in Morgan, the type of revenue that we can produce like this. There's a lot of very good positive things here. And of course, there's going to be outliers and things we'll have to deal with. But overall, is this a good thing for Morgan? In my opinion, absolutely. When I come to a place like Morgan, and we can go rafting and skiing and hunting and fishing and boating and all that. Nothing against the hotel. I don't want to stay in a hotel. I want to stay at an Airbnb that is got lots of space and it's in the mountains, you know, there's other places for, it's what I look for. So every time I go vacation, I look at Airbnb every time first. Unless it's in the middle of the city, it's always an Airbnb. It's a better deal for the people traveling and it's a better experience overall.
Yeah.
So I think for promotion of what type of people and the visitors we want to have in the valley, this promotes it very well.
And I think that when the staff was, when we were looking at different regulations and we were talking, that was one of the things why we says, you know, allow it anywhere that residentials are for that opportunity for someone to be able to go ahead and make a little bit more income, to have those areas, you know. Before the hotel was here, I have a huge family and there was nowhere for them to be unless they went down below. You know, now this is a great opportunity for them. I think the biggest thing that I think for us and staff is that when we have complaints, you know, our nuisance ordinance is too loose to be able to help regulate a little bit more. So maybe is that where we want to do, is this update our ordinance code to have more regulations to help with the problem people? Or do we say, hey, great, you know, we did have a complaint. It sounds like you're running one there. Hey, let's get you licensed so we can know that you're there and this is some of the rules and go from there and still make it inviting. I think it's mostly let's go ahead and have a tool that when we do have the problem children, we can do something about it, but.
We also talked about our own market here, and so our cost to purchase a home versus what you're gonna get on a nightly basis. So our nightly rental, if you look them up, are usually like $80 to $120 a night. It's very difficult to buy a property just to get in the short-term rental business, because we're not a resort market.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
for
We're
example, Bear Lake, a minimum is usually at $600 to $800 to $1,000 a night.
Yeah, so it's kind
Right
of,
here it was about $100,
yeah,
$80.
kind of self-regulating that way. The market will, it's not like because we permitted them, they're gonna double tomorrow. I think we're gonna have the same number that we have. But I don't know if you see it differently, but the other nice thing is that, to Justin's point, is they're doing the advertising for us. Right? They sell the area, like whatever somebody just brought up, this is a ski home or whatever. The hotel doesn't sell the area. The hotel sells beds. Right? Like, come to our hotel. They don't say, here, you know, come fly fishing, or here's all of the here's East Canyon, but in order to market as a Airbnb, you kind of have to sell the location, not just the home.
Sell the experience.
Yeah, so it is a good way, you know, to introduce families to.
I guess my comment would be, and I totally agree with what you're saying, Justin, as far as short-term and Airbnb, VRB, all that type of thing. But other than that, these situations where it's not short-term, it's actually fairly permanent, lasting months. I guess my question, and Ro can answer this, are we giving him what he needs to do his job if he has a complaint?
And that's where I see that the regulation would be benefit, because that would give a tool. Or if it might be like Lane, change your nuisance ordinance to be something that's a little bit easier. It's all up to interpretation. It's hard when your city is interpreting one way and your landowner is interpreting another way, and the landowner is going to always win.
So Tony, I think there's work to do there.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that's an ongoing process, but I think that's just on the nuisance side. What we've created here through the business licensing route doesn't necessarily mean it all has to go. It'll go both, right? But we
Well,
just
I
need to
guess
look
I'm
at
not just talking about myself here, and
the situation, right? We need to tighten that up, but we need to propose something for that where, hey, this ordinance is not fitting the situation. So we need to update that, but I don't see that as having much to do with short-term rental.
Me either,
Okay.
you know, I agree. Like I said, I totally agree with what Justin said. And I totally agree that VRBOs, Airbnbs are probably very much self-regulated. That's,
Yeah, so I need to just sit down with Roe and bring a proposal with whatever.
Yeah. and
Challenges
I
that we're
think-
finding,
I think
yeah.
if we can change the timeframe on code enforcements, I think that would help immensely.
Okay, so this discussion could go to midnight. We do have a number 2 item. So I would like to move to that.
Just
and
maybe
take-
before doing that, Jake, you
Um,
probably want to wrap up.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want, I think it'd be good to kind of in some way get a gauge as to, yes, we want to do,
The direction for you.
for me and the planning commission, do we want to do a short-term rental?
That was my
or-
next comment. is-
ordinance, and maybe you could just go around and have people quickly say, yes, I think we should do a short-term rental ordinance.
Put up a QR code. Let's do this.
And a nuisance, I think we can work on, it sounds like we need to do, I think everybody will agree that we need to go back and look at the nuisance ordinance with or without the short-term rental. So maybe we just go with that caveat that, yes, we're gonna do the nuisance ordinance, but if maybe you want to go around the room and just have everybody quickly say, so we can kind of get a gauge, or however the council or planning commission want to. I'm just asking for some direction.
My next statement was, I think we'd like to see this talked about in our planning commission
Okay.
meetings and brought up as an item, because I think it deserves more than just a quick yes or no tonight, because everybody, at least my head's full of all kinds of variables. And I think if we dissect it a little more, kind of possibly fit it to what our little town could use, then I'd like to suggest that. Yeah, I guess.
All right, let's hear from the council, and then planning commission, we could put that on our next agenda.
My thought is, I think we ought to look at it. And as I say, look at it, though, it depend on how that ordinance looks, if it would pass or not, but I think it's definitely something that we need to look at. My thoughts are oftentimes it's hard to put an ordinance or regulate something, because then I think, well, who's going to enforce the thing? And so that, you know, I think would need to be looked at also, but my vote would be, let's go ahead and take a look at what that ordinance would look like. Not saying that I'd pass it, but let's look at how that would look.
Dave, do you have anything?
Yeah, I don't rule out an ordinance. In fact, came into the meeting with a favorable consideration of an ordinance, but from our discussion, I think I'd like to pursue a non-ordinance, if you will, just as is, with the changing of our own nuisance rules and so forth, and see where that goes. I look at Morgan City, I look at Garden City, and it's just a different scope. And I'm not sure that a short-term rental program wouldn't be in the future, but I just question whether it is right now. If we can do it if we can do what Roe needs, if we can do what the city needs, I'd maybe prefer to favor that, at least starting out.
Tony?
You know, I think Justin's made some good points, and I've often thought about that. I thought if I was in the business of having a home and renting it out as an Airbnb or VRBO, I agree totally with Justin. I do my very best to make sure that was appealing to people to rent. So in that regard, I think it would be very much self-regulated. You say, Gary, but you do you do require a business license for that sort of thing, correct? Yeah, which definitely, I think that's, and I guess my only thought is I think if it's done that way, I'm not sure it has to be regulated a lot more. My concern is those that are not doing it that way, sort of under the table, so to speak. So, and I don't know how I don't know if I have an answer to how you address that or not, but You know, if it's done correctly and the people go through the correct steps, I'm okay with that. I think it's fine.
So-
Again, to Justin's point, I think he made some valid points there. And he ought to know, so.
So Tony, do you think a stricter, tighter nuisance ordinance?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think we probably should have that discussion.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think we need to move ahead with an ordinance on it. And that, I've stayed in a lot of the short-term rentals, and generally they're very good to stay in. They're, you know, advertised good and everything like that. And if they want to rent them, they'll keep them up.
May I back up for just a
Yes.
second? Justin, I'm gonna pick your brain again. You know, I think it was you with the Airbnb or VRBO, I don't know which one you are. They ever require any sort of, they don't ever require any type of inspection, do they? Or-
No, they didn't do an inspection, but you do have, I mean, you have to showcase your property properly, like they require so many pictures and they require insurance, they require, I'd have to go back and look at, but I'm pretty sure there was a number of like, the restrooms have to be there, there has to be parking. Ours is in a kind of a unique spot, but there were requirements that you had to have in order for that to list properly. And
That was through the website.
well, when you apply to become a host on Airbnb, there's just this list of things you have to do. You have to have a tax ID, which is an interesting thing here. And I was just looking, I got it ready to pull up to email you guys. The county has a permit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a $50 fee and then there's a permit that they have, but they also don't have a full ordinance. It's just a permit, right?
No, there is an ordinance. and I have a copy of that.
Okay. Sin wouldn't be a bad idea if they were somewhat similar, makes it easy because you got people that are so close. But I mean, there was a list of requirements that Airbnb has that say you must fulfill these or you can't list with us, you know, so my wife would be a better source for that than I am, but
Jeffrey?
And with that, if we've already have it going on in the city with, did you say 7 additional besides the hotel? And it's working to that point. I'm not sure we need to go reinvent our own set of rules, you know, if we can streamline and be more in line with the county and neighboring stuff with permitting, you know, I think we need to open the door and allow the permitting, but to draw up our own set of rules and you cans and can'ts. I'm not sure we need to go there right now, but if we make it an option and people can come in and get the proper permit, the proper requirements to meet the website, to let us know that the city is aware could be happening here and here and here. Sounds like that's already happening, and I think let's continue to float that boat and see what that does for us.
So to move this forward to the planning commission, do I call for a vote or do we just can recommend that this goes to the planning commission for further review? Or Ray, you're an expert at it.
Getting a business license.
A business license.
Okay. Nate, you got that?
For short term.
Short-term
Short-term.
rental.
Getting a business license. I'd say somewhat, maybe try to match county so that we're in
Yeah, I like that.
similar to the county,
Yeah.
whatever they. So we're just kind of both in the same area.
Okay,
What?
That's my vote. Only wanna.
Yeah, I haven't, but I'll get it.
I think, by this discussion that we've had, I think that shows that it's important to us. So, maybe we'll have to learn that we can probably only have one item on a work meeting.
So thank you, Jake, for your presentation too.
Yes,
and,
very good.
The work you did to put it together and facilitate the discussion.
Thank you.
So item 2, I don't know if I call it table it till the next one, but I don't think we can discuss too much in 3 or 4 minutes, or do we just want to introduce it, Jake?
What was item 2?
Mixed residential overlay.
Oh, well, that's on the main session, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it doesn't
Yeah.
need to, it doesn't need to be tabled.
Yeah, that's on in your council.
Regular
meeting.
In our big council.
Yeah. No,
And I
table.
think we already have the
Big panel.
recommendation from the planning commission on it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I move that we adjourn. Thanks for everybody's input.
Hey, Aaron, we got out of here.
Commission, yeah, that's.
Oh. My notes actually are different than what was recommended. We'll figure it out, right? And maybe we start with the nuisance ordinance first.
Enforcement, always, just an administrative.
Thanks, Ro. You know,
Thank you.
I think what we should do is over the next week or two is go through the nuisance ordinance. Just talk about the issues there, and I can come up with the draft that I could take straight to the planning commission.
Well, not only that, but the time frame on.
Yeah, yeah, and
You haven't got. I mean.
any of that.
Okay, so here's the. I'd like.
Yeah.
So you go out, you get the guy fined, he's got 10 days. Go out and get the guy fined, 10 days. I gotta give him 10 days.
Yeah, that's all they do.
When I drive past his house every single day, nothing's happening. Why do we send them 10 days?
Especially after the second or third. Yeah.
This is a rental property.
No, this is a home.
A home.
This is a home.
So it's not even short-term rental, it's just property maintenance.
Operating without a license.
Straight in the department, attorney, state.
And right now, we can't do that.
That's awesome. Because now.
Your hands are all right.
I'm calling dispatch. I need to keep that peace. I had it over. Like, that's-
Well, if you have something.
Yeah.
Take it.
That's why that. I'm gonna do some training. But what I'm saying is. the council does everything.
You know, it's like, why do I gotta stay 10 days?
Yeah,
Like half the.
yeah, that makes sense.
That's just. But
It's allowed where.
Thank you for all you do with that. That is not easy. Thank you.
You're not needing to go through. Because that's the building. So like in commercial, we have mixed use in the historic district, so we have some apartments. If it's an apartment, it should be allowed to be moved. Because it met that building code requirement for residents. And short term is a residential. So anyway, we just. Well, stay out of it. Very simple application. Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask. Thank you, Teresa. Very good.
Gary, are you overdressed or? There's no point. Yeah, you don't need to worry about points here. I don't wanna. Yeah, yeah. I don't wanna stand out because you'll see the rest of my. He just.
Didn't congratulate on the bridge. That's just decades in the making.
You've been over it.
Ever since I've been a little boy, I have just wanted that bridge. Yeah, I mean, I remember so long ago. So, I was awesome.
Yeah. That was the school comment out.
On day one.
Yeah, well, and they had a football game that same night at Oakland, and they're like, nobody discovered that there was a bridge, no?
Yeah,
Their comment was, I think people left the parking lot and their car just would not turn left. They'll discover it. Years.
Sorry if I'm allowed now.
Well. You know. So we put into. And we did this house.
We rented a house, a room in a house for a house for less than a day. It's just an illustration.
How you just, yeah. No problem. That for 3 hours.
That's seriously, that was our problem.
Wow.
And it's still in, I like the cylinder. Rose, not a problem. It's right on the data to correct it. Or 2 days ago.
It's also this.
It is.
I'm just sitting here. Well, short-term rentals, they sold it. But Gary, I think if you weren't here.
Go ahead.
Especially may have done. Comment on the lack of short-term rentals in the city, I think that was- Does he want to see me about this?
What's good for Lake?
Yeah. We've got room to grow into a lake driveway. The mentality though, when I first got here on. Right. And I'm like, you know, if it's permitted, you recognize it and you permit. If it's not permitted, it's just, we just don't know what it's not a permit. There's no way for me to come and apply. Okay, because we don't permit them. That doesn't mean that's short. That's a whole other.
A should go pretty quick though.
Well, it should be really.
It really should, right?
Yeah. His updates are gonna change every time.
And that's how I got defined as a residential use.
Well, that's.
Because that's a residence for a residential family.
Total offense.
Just kidding.
My drive gets license plate to protect my people.
That's what I said. You're looking at business. I recognize the business needs to make profit. The problem is developers, for the most part, are
It's just.
their thing and then leave. And then whose problems are it? So I think it's important for cities to be strict. And if you have to come to it, I think that's enough. Because I think we're good push back against it. Because developers have been pushing against cities.
Yes.
So we need to be stricter, we make sure it's right before we.
What did he say?
So that's a good insight. And then my next comment was, we always look to the developer. The developer is the mission person.
You ready? Bang, bang, bang. There it is for you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize.
That's
Mayor.
good.
I apologize, Mayor. I'm taking over your meeting. I apologize.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to the Morgan City City Council meeting. We're grateful for the work meeting we've just had. Now we'll begin our city council meeting.
Yep.
You're gonna, yep. Okay, so I've asked Eric if he'll give us the pledge, and Jeffrey, could you give us a opening prayer? Thank you.
If you'll repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this beautiful summer evening here in Morgan and for the moisture that we've received and are continuing to receive to be able to support and maintain our lifestyles and hobbies here in this valley. We're grateful for the protection that these mountains give us. This time in this city meeting, we ask a blessing that we'll be able to think clearly of the issues and the things that need to be taken care of today, as well as put things in place for the future needs of the citizens of Morgan City. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the community and the opportunities that it involves, and especially as we started school here today within our city, we ask a blessing to be upon the students that are coming and going every day in and out of our city to attend our schools. Bless them that we'll be able to support them with safety and the needs to keep them safe in all of their activities, and ask a blessing to be upon them and their teachers, that they'll have a great school year. And we again are grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody being Minutemen. Before we start, I just want to make one little statement about an item in your prayer. It was safety for the kids, and the bridge is complete. I think we'll see some good things there. So I appreciate everybody's efforts there. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting's agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as it's presented to us.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. If we move down to the consent agenda, we have a few items. And I believe we have to do these individually. Nope. Okay, so if there's anybody that's not tongue-tied, we can approve these consent agenda items with a motion.
Got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Yeah, on the warrants, page 10, the Wardell Brothers Construction, water minor construction, Sapphire Street leak, 32,000. That seemed like a big leak.
Yeah, I'll look that one up.
Okay. And then it looks like you had a couple of trucks come in. The Rush Truck Center for 93. What were you going to use that one for?
So that one's our snowplow.
Okay.
And
And you've
there's
got to
another,
equip it after that.
yeah, and there's another 105,000 in equipment. So that's just the truck. And
Gotcha.
now it's getting outfitted with the plow and the salter and the bed and all
Okay.
that stuff.
And it looked like another Chevy came in too.
Yeah.
About 65.
Yeah, and there's actually 2 Chevys, so on the next one, there will be another
Okay,
invoice for a similar amount. Actually, exactly the same amount.
all right. Well, we'll wait to hear back on the one.
So I think, Ty, I can give you a little bit of a hint to what that is, because
The leak.
yes,
Oh,
it's one up Mahogany.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just a bad
It was bad all the way around.
infrastructure prior to,
Yeah, so it was,
Hmm.
but I just want to look up the invoice to make sure the dollar amount's correct.
oh, okay.
Right, so I didn't tell you what it was, but I thought I would look up the invoice just to
Okay,
make sure
yeah.
it's correct amount and then coded correctly.
Would leaks typically cost those kinds of dollars? Every time there's a leak, are we spending that kind of money?
No,
Oh, what made this one unique, I guess?
well, contracting it and then depending on the road and the condition, but we did have to order. It was a fall apart job in a concrete
Hmm.
concrete structure that wasn't done correctly,
Mhm.
that they just punched through. So it had to be a whole new
And that adds to the cost.
vault and everything. Yep.
And that comes through the contractor.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, old fittings. They couldn't get they had to bypass it actually just to keep the water on. But it was a
Temporarily.
brand new valve and everything. But I'll look up the invoice just to make sure it's
Sure, yeah. Correct
what got
amount,
typed in was the right amount, just to be sure.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Here, I-
Yes,
A couple of questions on warrants too.
okay.
Colonial flag, is that the new flag pole over there where the tree was, Ty?
Yep. Yep.
And then, I don't know how you pronounce it, water, or toter, the garbage cans.
Mhm.
How many cans?
So we actually split that with the county. So we buy in bulk and then we bill the county for half. And I can't remember if it's 100 cans each. Or I can look that invoice up too if you want.
I was just curious.
Yeah. We typically order once a year. So some of them are new and then we hold on to them for replacement cans, but we bid that out last year and then got the best pricing. And then we also got price cut because of the number we ordered. That's why we ordered jointly with the county.
I just noticed it was like 38,000, so that must have been quite a few cans.
38,000 as well. Or was that the total of the?
38,973.
Yeah. I'll look that one up too. Just to make sure.
Any more discussions?
Construction and Big Jackson. We run, fiber, something down there.
I think they relocated lines. Actually, no, we actually hired them to try and bore for our power lines to put the power conduits in.
They didn't have any luck either.
No.
Got it.
Yep, nope. They tried for 3 days, I think. So. 600 cans
Okay, that makes sense.
from Toter at 57.75 each.
I figured it must have been at least 500 or so.
Yeah, I apologize. We used to order 100 at a time, but since we combined with the county, it might not even be half. They might have the majority of that we bill them back for.
Yeah, okay, I was just, no, there must have been quite a few, that's a lot.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense.
We can,
Did you get your answer?
Yeah, he said it. They tried to
Bore.
try and bore.
Okay.
Lower than line by the school.
Okay, any more discussions?
Mayor, if I may, that was the right amount billed from Mordell's. And then there's a couple pages of itemized breakdown. So it was entered correctly.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Hopefully not too many of those kind of leaks.
I'm just trying to see what the biggest,
Yeah, that was a pricey one.
Yeah.
1, 2, 4 days worth. It was one that we had to leave, come back to, and then put it all back together.
Okay,
Need a motion?
yes,
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
That's smooth. And I'll second that.
do we have to include the warrants or? That's
The
just good.
consent.
Consent agenda includes that. Okay. You seconded?
I did.
Okay, so we have a motion from Tony to accept the consent agenda, A through G, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Denise, do we have anybody for citizen comments? Okay. Well, let's go into the active agenda and item A. Interlocal corporation tongue twister agreement between Morgan County and Morgan City for the purpose of assisting the city with the 2023 municipal general election. Resolution 2317. Ty?
Denise could probably comment on this, but we've relied on them to do our to handle our elections. We haven't had an agreement in the past. This is the first time we've actually done it by agreement, and Denise did a great job on recognizing that first and then also drafting the agreement and getting cooperation from them. Yep. Yes, and coordinated it. So it's always good to be supported by contract and or agreement. And kind of recognize it this year because they didn't have an election of their own. They're just handling the cities. And typically it didn't really rise to we didn't really think about it much because they were always just tossed in with the other county and state elections.
What we do, the city does all the noticing, get all the declaration, candidacy filed, the financial disclosures. I'm responsible for all of that, but the county, sends out the ballots and tallies ballots and does all of that. Cooperative.
It's always been a budget item, but never an agreement to have them do that for us. So that's what that is.
So it's $1.85 per active registered voter. That's a.
Yes, because every registered voter will be the ballot. You know, I don't know. She's responsible for keeping all the registered voters, you register with the county. I can find out though and let you know.
Inside the city.
Okay, is there any more discussion?
Steve, I'd move to approve resolution 23-17. Approve a resolution approving interlocal cooperation agreement with Morgan County for the purpose of assisting the city with the 2023 municipal general election under the oversight of the city recorder.
No, I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to accept resolution 23-17. Dave?
Aye.
Eric? Tony?
Aye.
Yeah. Jeffrey?
Aye.
Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Item B, amendment to Title 5, Chapter 5-02, Section 5-02-080 of the Morgan City Code by removing restrictions based on the breed of an animal. Ordinance 23-11. Thought this one was interesting.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I do have a question.
Okay,
What brought this about?
So,
Give Ty a minute to explain.
yeah, so Denise found the discrepancy in our ordinance versus state code. And also just kind of going through I don't remember the exact discussion. Denise, you wanna? Was it?
Yeah, it was actually a citizen that came in, I was talking to Steph about it. Steph pointed it out. State code changed several years ago and we had an ordinance that we amended our city code that took out the breeds of animals in one section, but it was inadvertently left in this one. So we just need to clean this up so it follows state code and the rest of our code.
So we can't discriminate against dogs anymore, but cats are okay. I'm just kidding. Because of the breed, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't distinguish.
But so Gary, that brings, I think it begs a question, though. We still leave in all species of non-human mammals except domestic dog, which by their hereditary characteristics have a propensity to be vicious. That just seems awfully loose to me. I mean, who decides whether it's vicious or not?
A wolf, for example.
Okay,
Wild wolf, some people have those,
okay.
or coyote or, things that are meant to be in the wild. They're deemed to be vicious.
So maybe it's geared more towards a wild animal because some dogs by their breed can be mean.
And that's not excluded. That's addressed in another section in the animal control section, I think.
Yeah, we just can't list the breed of animal.
It's just so if a dog bites, it can be determined to be a vicious.
Vicious,
animal.
right, yeah.
We would go take it and
Right.
confiscate it and find the owner. If it's really a vicious dog, sometimes we
Yeah.
require them to be contained, other times we
But-
require that they be put down.
It seems a little bit backwards to determine that it's vicious after it's bit somebody.
Yes.
But I like the concept of maybe the wild nature of it. If that's what it is, that I think
that's what
that,
they are.
yeah, that's
They're by their
that's
nature.
definitive. Yep, thank you.
We do have an ordinance requires, we have a leash law, right, in the city? And then also, can't remember how it reads, but somehow or another you have to have it contained within your property. I'm not sure how that ordinance reads, but. And a leash law. Yeah.
And that's all enforced by.
I hate to admit it, but the most problem I have is with chihuahuas. Chihuahuas,
Yeah, they're
ornery little things.
fake. They'll bite you for no reason.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? We have a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. To adopt ordinances 2311 and ordinance amending Title 5, Chapter 5.02, Section 5.02.080 of the Morgan City Code by removing restrictions based on the breed of an animal.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to ordinance 23-11. I can call this an all in favor, correct? Oh, it's an ordinance. Okay, sorry. Dave.
I,
Tony.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Jeffrey. Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, let's move to item C, amendment to Title 10, Chapter 10-30, Section 10-30-040 of the Morgan City Code by amending the total width allowed for driveways. Ordinance 23-12. Ty.
So a couple, maybe 2 months ago, 1 month ago, we adopted a new city standard If you remember, our engineer came and presented and
Yeah, Matt.
that. Anyway, after we adopted that, we discovered that it's not consistent with the section of code. So this,
Cleans that up.
it cleans that up, and we kind of went the route that felt like, since you just adopted the city standards, that was your preference. And so now we're going back to city code and,
Let's follow state mandate too, right?
not sure if there's state restriction on,
You're maybe referencing the asphalt width.
That's right. It was
on the roadway.
Yeah, not the
So-
driveway. Yeah.
Your standards that you did update do match the state requirement. This is a different item
Yeah.
and
yeah.
The state was 32 feet, wasn't it?
yeah, for asphalt, and this is for the driveway width.
Yeah, for the asphalt.
And so this is just matching the text code with the engineering, standards, which are plans,
Yeah.
drawings.
Yeah, the other part of that standard was just because now we locate the water lines closer to the property boundaries and not in the middle of the lot. So it keeps driveways out of the meter bases and
Fire in line.
all that stuff. So that's what that is.
So there's not necessarily a measurement on it,
36 feet wide
36.
on a driveway.
on a driveway.
So
At the, so
if
that's
you're
a,
on-
that's a development standard. So when you build, when you do the subdivision, then you come in and build, then the house is built with a 36-foot driveway. There's still
Maximum.
maximum. But for example, if you do it like an RV pad or whatnot, you can still S-curve it off of the driveway, down the side of the house. It just can't come straight off of the road over the curb, your
Yeah.
cutouts only as
Still
wide as-
flare out.
Yeah,
Doesn't eliminate RV pads.
right. You just can't take your entire lot, pave it and drive straight off the road, so you might have to maneuver a trailer, but they have cameras for that now.
So 36
That's probably-
maximum.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a single car garage, they don't need to.
Correct.
That's like
They could
two
go with
double-
12 or 15 or whatever.
Okay. Any more
Make the motion to do amendment to Title 10, Chapter 1030, Section 1030.040 of the Morgan City Code by amending to the total width allowed for the driveway. Ordinance 23-12.
Okay, any more discussion?
I'll second that.
Second it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more discussion before I call for a vote?
So anything that has been done prior to this ordinance tonight would be essentially grandfathered in. Good.
Just clarification, right, Tony?
Thank you, Tony. I was actually worried about that personally. Okay. We have a motion from Jeff for ordinance 2312 and who made the second? Tony?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Dave?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Jeff? Jeffrey?
Aye.
Hey Denise, that was unanimous. Okay, item D. Enactment of Title 10, Chapter 10-15, Mixed Residential Overlay, MRO Zone, Ordinance 2304. Jake,
Good evening. It's great to be with you.
it's good to have you.
Okay, so in continuation from our last, from a previous meeting, we'll continue the discussion of the MRO and the city council can decide tonight if they're ready to vote in favor of it or not, or make any changes. I would like to go over the memo that was included in the packet. Denise is bringing that up.
Page 55.
I was gonna say it's 55, Denise. I'm like,
And while she's pulling that up, I'll go through it. So I talked with staff and with Ty and we debating some of the
Type 55.
items that were brought up last time. And a couple things came back with some clarification. Do you want me to do it?
It's not let me go past 13 on that.
Here, I'm just gonna do a Zoom share. I
Oh,
got
you-
it pulled up. Yep.
It's in the packet on 55. Oop, sorry.
go. So this is a recommendation for zones that would be allowed for base zoning. As a reminder, the mixed residential overlay is up in the cloud. It's an optional zoning tool that can be pulled down. And that requires a legislative action. Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and then it comes to the city council for final decision if a specific property is recommended for MRO. And so the base zoning determines where in the city it could happen. And so these are my two lists here. Allowed in R12, R10, R8, R7. And while R8 is not permitted use anymore, we still have some of those zoning areas. Doesn't change the base zoning. So don't worry about, we're not going back to R8. But in terms of base zoning, RM15 and then general commercial. Not allowed in manufacturing and distribution, R120, RR, highway commercial, ag, and central commercial. However, if there's a specific area, and we have some of these in the city that are more in that central core, that maybe it is an odd fit that they're currently in R120 or an RR or something like that, they, at the same time, they can apply for the rezone to change their base zone and also get the MRO. So there may be a few odd areas in the city that don't fit, but don't worry about those, they can change. So that's the first recommendation after our debate last time, came back with that. This paragraph below is the same from before in terms of not have frontage on key commercial corridors such as State Street and Commercial Street. And the State Street, it does end at Young Street, so not taking it out far south.
Jake, may I ask a question on that?
Yes.
It was intended to be in an infill development located within the community's core and not near the city's perimeter. In my mind, we're at some point in time going to be approached by someone to do one of these out on the city perimeter. Because I'm not sure what we're defining as the city core, but I don't know how much property we have currently is inside what the city core would be that would fall into this. So I guess what I'm saying is I just think at some point in time, you're going to see somebody that's going to come in and probably and may request this out on the perimeter somewhere.
Yeah. I'm okay nixing that language and not worrying so much about that in terms of that, because that is a little bit hard to decide where is the core and some of that. I do have additional language on contiguous MRO next to MRO, because we talked about that before. But in terms of that language, I mean, I see what you're saying, and that may be a little bit difficult to decide where is that core and where is the perimeter. However, this zoning, the base zoning, kind of already does that. We don't have a lot of R112s and R10s on the perimeter. It's the ag that's on the perimeter and some of that. The base zoning kind of settles that in.
Yeah, I should understand what you're saying. Just, it's a little ambiguous, I mean, to me, but
And the base zoning will follow should follow the general plan. And the general plan does have the higher intensities in the center. And as the city moves out, you lower in intensity as you move out.
Mayor, may I make a comment? To kind of Tony's point, on some of those properties, they would apply for a rezone at the same time if they applied, and so I'm not sure that the perimeter necessarily matters so much.
And
Or
and
kind of
it will be a
arbitrary, right?
moving
But-
boundary at times.
Yeah, but even, I'm just saying, even going through that process, probably makes it so we don't need to even address the boundary as a standalone issue. Just
Correct.
my thought.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, that's the first item there in terms of the memo. The second item here, this is a recommendation of the usable open space, 75% must be less than 10% slope. So what we're saying, if you're going to build an MRO and we require a little pocket park of some kind, and you have to have a place for the kids to play and all of that open space, of the required open space, 75% must be less than 10%. So that means if someone's going to build one on the hillside, they want to promote that, they're going to have to put in retaining walls and spend the money, make it be nice. What we don't want to see is if someone did one on a hillside, they say, here's your usable open space, and it's a hillside with sagebrush and rocks, and you say you can sled on it in the winter and call it good. So the idea is here that if someone is going to do this, we want that usable open space, because that's one of the big benefits of it on a lower slope. So that's kind of I'm throwing that out as a text to add on to the ordinance.
You don't,
Jake,
you
just-
don't want it a snow sledding park, huh?
That could still be there, but not for the playground and not for the soccer and baseball area.
Yeah.
So if
That's
you had a
reasonable.
situation like that on a hillside and they put in, say, a trail or a bike trail or something, does that qualify? And then the other question I had, that this has to be handled by not the city on maintenance.
Correct. So how it works on that is only if it's a larger project, and let's say they're going to end up with a park that's between 2 to 5 acres, the city could enter into an agreement to take it on as a park. However, the default is it's an HOA.
Okay. Thank you.
That puts the city in the driver's seat. And these little pocket parks are good things, but they're not cost effective for maintenance. And that's where that extra burden goes on the HOA.
Okay.
Okay, now we had this discussion about how big should an MRO be and what happens if it's going to be a bigger property or a bigger parcel. Ty and I batted this around quite a bit. And I'm going to read this first part, and we actually have a verbal recommendation that's a little bit different in here. As a standalone project, MRO should conform to the 2.5 to 10 acres in size. That's what the draft ordinance says. After talking with Ty and debating a little bit more, we want to bump that up to 4 to 10 acres. And the reason for the increase is just a little bit more to get a little bit more substantial community, because they are going to need an HOA. They will have some open space requirements, a little bit more, that gets it from 25 units to 40 units minimum. And so it puts it on its own legs a little bit solid.
Yeah, in the park space would only be 1/3 of an acre.
Yes.
So it
It-
doesn't really accomplish what the ordinance intends to at 2.5 acres. It really doesn't start to make sense until 4 acres
It bumps it up to a half an acre, which a half an acre for a pocket park actually works.
Yeah.
Is 4 enough?
I think it is.
Well, we're just saying as a minimum.
And
Be once you get the bonus densities, because you're clustering several homes and some mixed mixed uses. So it's not just like a townhome development, right? It's single family. And the
Yeah.
bonus density and then.
I
the
would say
open
that 4
space.
is enough. And it'll be up to the developer to run the numbers and he'll have to make an HOA. And I mean, they'll have to do their math and their homework to make a pencil. And also how it's set up is all the streets will be public streets. And so they'll go in properly and be part of the street network. And then any alleys or common space, that'll be a HOA and that'll be on the burden of the HOA. Okay, continuing.
But may I make
Oh,
another comment?
Go ahead.
But in that process, if it just doesn't look like it's gonna function, then you just don't approve it.
Right.
But arbitrarily to say what's too big and too small, we really just felt like 4 was a better minimum than 2.5, just because you don't get any open space out of that and kind of defeats the whole concept of what we're offering bonus. But I guess what I'm saying is if it's an odd shaped 4-acre that doesn't have connectivity and stuff, you just
Still
don't
may not
approve it.
work.
Yeah, you just don't approve it. But based on the fact that it just doesn't, you don't get a design that flows or doesn't work,
So
not
one
being
more
arbitrary,
question
just.
I have is, let's say it's a 20-acre parcel. Only if they go up to a 10-acre, that's the only HOA. The rest of it, is that in the HOA?
Let me read this part because it actually is in here as a recommendation, and of course that can change. However, as part of a larger subdivision, the MRO may be used for up to 25% of the gross acreage. For example, a 20-acre project could be an MRO up to the first 10 acres, and the remaining 10 acres could be 75% base zone, compatible R zones, and 25% MRO. So we are saying it can grow with bigger projects, but the max that can be is a 4 to, I say, yeah, a 4-to-1 ratio. The continuation of MRO after 10 acres should be a 4-to-1 ratio or less. This makes it compatible with larger developments and doesn't force large parcels into smaller projects. We were a little bit afraid of everybody wanted to piecemeal the property to get it to that 10-acre. And this kind of solves that, saying if you are going to go bigger, then it's a smaller. But it doesn't make it all bigger. It doesn't make it all MRO as well.
Yeah, so that's all I was gonna comment is, so on a larger scale, it doesn't change also doesn't override the entire intent of the zone. Because 75% it'll still have a zone feel to it. And not just here's a whole new thing that doesn't reflect the zone that's currently there.
And I think it goes on to state too, that it should all come together as looking at as being one unit or one development. Not 2 different developments.
The entire project must be designed at once for streets, trails, utilities, stormwater, and open space. So if it is a bigger project, we're still looking at the whole thing at once. The usable open space requirement only applies to the gross MRO acreage. However, the amenities, trails, park, and open space should be accessible and usable by the whole development in the city. So that usable open space requirement is just for that requirement applies only to the MRO. But however, I do have one other catch on here. Requirements for architecture, landscaping, HOA management, and street trees should apply to the whole development, including non-MRO. Architecture requirements, including garage placement, materials, and unique architecture, landscape requirements, including water-wise landscaping. So we are saying if you're going to do this whole thing, we want to see the homes and the landscape and the street trees also come with it in terms of quality.
I think that's well done, Jake.
It's a little bit of you can't have it all. We're trying to thread the needle here and make it appealing.
It's been a
but saying
process.
We're going to raise the whole development too.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, I have another, I didn't think about this one before, but what about people that want to build in phases? So you do 20 acres, could we eliminate the option to build phase one, phase two, or is that stuck somewhere in another code where as long as it's
Oh,
standalone?
I think building phase is okay. It's more of the,
As long as the
the-
improvements are in all the streets.
the
Or-
master plan is all at once.
All at once?
The street plan kind of thing.
Okay,
You're talking about putting in the streets and then not building till later. That's a tough call because now you're expending, significant infrastructure without getting that money back.
well, and the only thing that I guess what I'm referring to is a project that gets started and not finished. Because that's when people want to come and build in phases, to me, it says, we're gonna go so far, sell lots, then we have enough money to do the next phase, sell lots, and then we have enough, right? But if on an MRO, I just feel like if you're gonna hit these design standards and hit all these other requirements, I'm just voicing caution on doing it in phases, but I might be way off base. But anyway, that's just get it
Is that
all
where the
approved at
development
once.
agreement comes in?
And an MRO, I would not enter into an MRO without a development agreement in place. That would describe exactly what you're talking about, which is the timing.
Yeah,
And if they didn't hit the timing, for example, a lot of the improvements should be made with a certain phase. And if it's not made with that phase, then future phases would not be able to.
okay.
be produced.
I'm okay if they build in certain phases. What I don't like is that we
Let them go.
plat certain phases, it's like, we're only gonna go here, record, even though it's part of a larger project. Because in a normal subdivision, you just be like, well, if it doesn't finish, it doesn't finish, but I'd just be more cautious about that is all.
I agree. Your development agreement would have to be a
Okay.
little more particular than the normal development.
Okay, that's
You agree?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's development agreement.
perfect. Thank you.
Although, Ty, if you had the phases, was the potential there that, chances are the MRO is going to be the first phase. And the, single family is going to be second, third, or maybe not that, maybe that's not, maybe it's the other way, but suppose the high density was the first phase and all of a sudden we get that done. There's no more phases completed. Now all we've got is high density and nothing else.
But
We're expecting a mix.
But the amenities come with the MRO. They have to be
The what?
inside. The amenities.
Okay.
The amenities have to be inside the MRO area. Like the pocket park and some of that has
So
to
it could
be.
stand on its own.
Yes, it can stand on its
Anyway.
own.
Okay.
And that's kind of what my concern was, but they answered that.
And the development agreement will,
Typical subdivision that's
Yeah.
hanging out there, so.
and the development agreement will run with the land. So whenever whoever is ready to build that next
Accept that.
R12, whatever,
Sure.
they have to accept what's already,
Even though it may be 20 years later.
yeah, and yeah. Tony?
So to Dave's point, so the MRO is a 20-acre MRO. The mixed residential is built first, okay? So is what you're saying, but all of the streets and improvements have to be inside that 20 acres? Help me here a little bit. So all of that development has to be done, even if it's going to take 20 years for a home to be built there.
No, I think what we're saying, the planning and design needs to be all done. Where the street's gonna go and connect and what areas will be houses has to all be planned up front.
But the MRO could stand on its own because you'd have all your parks and other amenities if you didn't have the extra acreage. And that's what we'd be okay with because we're allowing it with the MRA overlay anyway.
The MRO can only be 10 acres, am I reading that right?
As a
As a standard.
standalone.
Right.
And then if it goes bigger, then it's a 4-to-1 ratio. For every one part. Is that the right way? Right? Because it's 1 out of 4. So if it were 10 acres of additional, then it could be 2.5 MRO.
But if it's 20 acres, it doesn't have to be this 10 acres, that 10 acres. You just take the calculation and design the whole thing with
And mix it.
a mix it, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So you're just saying that you know, you're applying, but you're gonna take the whole 20 acres and meet this mix at that level so that it all equals out, but you approve it all at once, and then how it builds out is by development agreement.
Yeah, let's suppose phase one was the MRO and 2 and 3 were single family residents and we didn't get past phase 1. 2 and 3 will always be single family residents because the overlays over the whole piece of property. And suppose the developer says, oh, I'm out, I'll sell the property. The new person has to accept the single family residence. He couldn't put another MRO on phase 2.
That's correct. And they would also have to follow the requirements of architecture and landscape and street trees for the single family.
Then say a new owner would have to follow the same overall design, is that
Design?
correct?
You'd have to follow the same, he'd have to follow that. I
Yes.
guess that's my question.
Yes, he'd have to follow that because that's per development agreement
Mhm.
or come back and renegotiate a development agreement.
That development agreement would be transferable to a new owner,
It goes with
Runs with the
land.
land.
tied to the land. Okay.
There's not an expiration date on it.
Oh,
Okay.
Typically,
shelf life.
there's some interesting nuances, but typically, if you were to just come in with a plain R110, all these design standards would not be possible to put just in an R110 because they're prohibited under state law. But if you come in with an MRO with a development agreement, and even if I was just talking to Jake, and the additional acreage that you have beside the MRO may very well be in a PRUD too. That's another tool that you have. But either a PRUD or a development agreement would allow you to impose those standards on the entire thing. Whereas if they were just to come in just with a straight R110, the state law changed a couple of years ago where you can't impose design standards on homes. So it's kind of I'm not going to say a way of getting around, but it's a way of making a uniform, good-looking subdivision. And even if it's an R110 or R120, some below it, so it's good.
So Jake, that time you took us to Hill Farm,
Yep. Hill
So-
Farms.
that's an MRO. I mean, in my head.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have that, and then you have bigger single dwellings around the outside.
Yeah.
But they're all attached to that requirement.
That
Yes.
development, yeah.
That I don't know the zoning specifically of that project. However, how it is built, it matches up very well with what we're proposing.
Okay.
Very well. It's very ideal because they did have some little cluster neighborhoods with smaller lots and had those amenities and then had bigger ones. But some of the architecture requirements that we're asking for are exactly that. And they're not overly burdened. We're basically asking for unique design. Doesn't take the same floor plan with the same materials on the outside and stamp that down the street. That's really the biggest thing there. A couple things with the garage, but. Okay, the last one here, and this is, I think, the last one in the memo. This also was another thing that was debated last time regarding MRO developments. So this is in the proposed ordinance regarding MRO developments should not be contiguous or develop next to existing MRO developments. And then it's supposed to say, as per our previous discussion, I suggest that new development, and this would be the new language, new development patterns should provide choices in housing sizes and types, including larger homes and medium-sized lots. Careful consideration should be given if new MRO developments are proposed next to existing MRO developments. So we leave it at that, saying they can continue next to each other, but careful consideration. And so it does kind of take that off a little bit. Especially now that in this proposed language, we're looking at allowing it to mix in with other types of development. Then it takes away the whole, can't have it next to each other, but there's that language there. If the city council says, you know what, we really don't want them right here, let's hold off on this. It doesn't look like the right project in the right place.
I think that would be more of an issue on the smaller scale. So the smaller next to each other just looks like it replicates. On a larger scale, I don't see so much of an issue as being next to each other. I'm just saying the way I see it playing out. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but.
Another question. So typically, let's say we had a subdivision that was approved and it was an R110 and there was 20 lots in this subdivision, single family residences. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily ever have a means of taking to look to see what that looked like, because the owner of that lot would build a home according to their preferences and how they would want to build. Of course, we have some standards in that. I understand that. Here's my question. I think I've asked this before, and I'm just wondering if I'm being out of line here. If it's an MRO that's proposed, is it possible for us to see what that developer has in mind, or a rendering of what that's going to look like as far as what the homes are going to look like? I mean, I've sat in a lot of these meetings and I've seen examples you brought, and I said, that looks good. I think that looks good. Are we going to have the ability to see that before we move forward with it, and the developers is going to bring to us and say, this is what it's going to look like, and we can hold them to that?
Yes. Now, the question is, certainly they'll have to produce renderings and all of that. Now that the scale is getting a little bit bigger, I don't think that we can or should ask for elevations of every single home type. A 20 or 30 acre project, that's a lot of homes, and they cannot all be designed ahead of time. However, I think sample elevations, yes. The architecture will have to be approved by staff as part of this project. That does require and so right now, single family homes are just approved through the building permit office. Engineering does look at the driveway. I think that's it. This would require also looking at the architecture style and matching the ordinance.
So the MRO by design is calling for increased costs up front. There's increased risk to the developer that I spend this money and it doesn't get approved. He has to be pretty serious about wanting to go
Yes.
forward.
However, they will have to come in with plans and color plans. We could even ask for a 3D rendering of the community. I think that's not out of line of this type of project, so you can see what they're going to get. We do require, the ordinance does require renderings of all the open space and amenities. So you will see that, and that is in there. Does that answer? But to see every single home, I think is impossible, especially on a larger project.
Jake, on page 1, you had, and I'm not sure, or maybe you discussed, I just missed it, but HOA management, was there any further discussion on that?
Yeah, that's from the previous memo, so I just left that in there.
Okay.
HOA must be managed by a third-party professional business independent of real estate ownership within the development and has no conflicts of interest
You
with
weren't
the real
looking
estate
to
development.
change that or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, I just left that because that I thought that was important as well. This was basically suggesting language be added and modified in the ordinance.
So I was on a Zoom meeting, 2 of them today. One was WFRC, and the other one, I'm not sure what it was, other than it was on land use to review for attainable housing. So attainable, is that, sounds like that would be more of the condensed or tighter housing. And so they had all kinds of developers comment on it, and had a problem with cities telling them how to build and things of that nature. But the overall thing was was attainable housing instead of affordable housing. And in an MRO, that would make it so in their definition of attainable would be there's more houses on a little piece of property. Therefore, it's not as expensive for the developer. So maybe the price can be a little lower, but lots of developers commenting negative towards the cities, and yet the city has to defend residents' comments, residents' feelings, protect yourself with the zones and different things. But it sounds like, to me, the future is possibly, Gary, we're going to get forced to this kind of thing anyway by the state. My positive comment is from listening to this meeting is to get ahead of the game some. I don't know if that makes sense to you, what I'm trying to say, but there was all kinds of small communities on the rural side of things that had the same feelings that we want to keep it rural and affordable, but we changed that to attainable, and this somewhat moves us in that direction.
Attainable is more average, and that language, I see it as more like average income.
Maybe moderate income rather
yeah.
than low income.
Yeah, affordable by definition is 80% of the area median income or less. Attainable, you could say up to 100% of the area median income. Attainable is kind of average Joe incomes. Not luxury is certainly not attainable.
Well, Steve, our own townhomes over in your neighborhood there, that I still use the story. My grandson was able to obtain a townhome where he couldn't have afforded a single family. So there's a good example. It was attainable, but not necessarily affordable.
Yeah, and you
Still
can
a more-
define affordable. It just depends on where your income is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's really
80% or
no
less.
need for affordable. Because if you can't afford, no matter what it is, you
Well,
can't afford it.
But there are government programs that help the affordability though. And, you know, you look to state and other federal programs that can step in and help that.
Yeah,
This will help in terms of, you're right, you're getting more units per acre. And so the land cost is lower. We do have added requirements and open space amenities that does bump it up. And so there's certainly a trade-off. And also with this being an overlay zone, it's an optional tool, you know. They don't like it, they don't have to use it.
You know, I made the comment in a previous meeting, because I read it in the minutes today. He said that since he's been the manager, every application and zoning request in Morgan has been for higher density. And so you think about it, it's going to happen. It is happening. This gives us an opportunity to help control it and maybe set our destiny a little bit on how we want it to look.
But is it safe to say, sitting in and having this discussion, and I'm kind of going back to where I was a minute ago with planning and listening to this conversation. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like what we're saying is we favor this for one reason is we may be able to have medium density housing, townhomes and that sort of thing that aren't necessarily cookie cutter, that look a little, what's the word I want to look here, a little
What
more.
we've been doing for historically, I'll go down the street and that's what you get.
Well, okay, not always, but okay. But so I think that's part of the reason for this, right? To make sure that it's attractive and not necessarily cookie cutter. Was that a safe comment?
Yes.
And blends with the neighborhood feel.
And blends?
So, just, oh, sorry, I'm talking, Mayor.
go ahead.
The other thing is just a better use of space. So if everybody had the exact same house type in every single development, there's a lot of people don't have the options. So there's some people that can afford it one way or the other, but just prefer the smaller,
Yeah.
small, they'd rather have a smaller yard with a pocket park
Sure.
than,
A half acre.
yeah, so if we're gonna have density and accommodate them, this is just a really good tool to make better use of space. So we can accommodate the growth pressures without necessarily having to explode our boundaries.
Well, and create attractive neighborhoods.
Yep. I just also wanted to highlight, oh, sorry. And then I'll be done and you guys can deliberate as in council. Last staff comment, but I just appreciate the work that Jake did from the last time, just listening to the concerns. And one of the biggest things was limiting the zones. I don't know if you remember when this was first proposed, it was proposed in every single zone, even though we currently don't allow residential use in commercial or manufacturing. And so I really like how it really is a residential product. So now I'm done.
How the process is developed.
Yeah, it's gone through a lot of revisions.
Yep.
I appreciate all you've done for us too, Jake. Put a lot into it and my problem is now I judge everything on that Kaysville development.
Well-
I think that's all my problem as well. I've seen some really nice examples of this, so.
We used to only reference Layton. What's this case? What's this Kaysville stuff?
Competition now, Gary.
Don't read it.
Came, the
Don't-
developer came. from
Bar's
Layton,
been
by the
raised.
way.
Don't-
That Destination Homes came from Layton, so.
They did.
Don't read anything into that, Gary.
Company.
Where they started.
Well, I think it's a big step for us. And it's, I don't know, it has negative feelings and positive feelings and I've thought deeply on it actually for quite a long time and that I get from residents, put a gate up 3 days after they moved here.
They want it on the highway or just on
Weaver
State
Canyon.
Street?
Weaver Canyon.
Weaver Canyon,
Down by the power plant.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just appreciate all you've done and gone back and forth with us and put a lot of effort into it. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you for being open to it. Very revolutionary in terms of where we've come together. Sorry, retracted. Pull that from the minutes.
This is very archaic, but in a new, it's gone full circle, so now it makes sense or something like that.
I take a minute, Mayor.
You can take as much as you want, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate Jake and all that he's put into this. Definitely took some of the concerns and things that I had in previous meetings and has addressed that. Feel that that's been addressed appropriately. I definitely sit here with mixed feelings still tonight. If this was probably will come to a vote tonight, I'm still not sure what I'm gonna do. It's interesting, you sit on a city council and as part of our responsibilities, we get to listen to the people that we represent. I've heard quite a few of them speak to me about this and definitely took in their opinions and what they thought of it. And the other interesting thing that I find as we sit here at city council is we have the ability to put how we want our community to look, and that goes into how we're gonna take situations like this and how we're gonna implement them into our city. And again, we're represented by the people that have voted us here to do that. I will leave the community that I was in yesterday nameless. They are still to the point where they want 1 acre lots for a house. They do not want to see anything like this in their community, and they are very proud of having those bigger lots. They want the rural feel. And so that's where they're gonna stick at, which they have every right to do that. If their elected representatives want to do that, then I think they can stay that course. And so it comes, again, I sit here with mixed feelings going, I'm with you, Mayor. This is a huge step for us moving forward. It also with the I've been in a lot of these MROs. I've seen them, not necessarily the one that you guys have been in, but I've been in quite a few of these. I find oftentimes too, as I travel around the state, that people also like the ability to find an open piece of ground to build the home that they want to, their dream home, and that they're not stuck under some HOA. It's almost getting to be a desirable thing to find an open lot where you can build the home that you want to without having somebody dictating to you how that front will look, how it will be, the kind of style of house that you have. And it's getting to be a very desirable thing because nobody's regulating you how your house would need to look. So there's many facets to looking at this of what do we do with this? And I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate the work that's gone into this. And question, Jake, the memorandum that we talked about tonight that you put in our packet, is that verbiage updated in this ordinance?
No, because the ordinance is as was recommended. However, the purpose was that the city council would propose, if you propose the ordinance be adopted, that you recommend the language to go with it, and that would be done. And so these changes would be included. And I wrote that language specifically so it could be referenced that way.
Okay, that was one of the questions that I had is how that memorandum, the language and things that have been worked on in that would fit into the ordinance. So.
And question for Gary, can they cite the memo and I just go ahead and put the memo language in, or do we need to be more specific?
That's a good question. Generally, an ordinance has to be in front of you before you can approve the language of the ordinance. But if you know what the language is, you can go ahead and approve it with the addition of the new language. So if it's a concept, I think you're probably going to be less likely to be able to do that, and it could be challenged. But if it's actual language like Jake is recommending here, I think you're pretty good to be able to prove it with those amendments. Does that make sense?
Would you recommend that?
You say we could go ahead with the memo as it's stated.
It'd be okay just to say with the changes.
With the
addressed.
changes that he's indicated there, I think they're specific enough that
I'll go
you'll
back.
be all right to amend it.
Is it cleaner to have that ordinance with these added to it?
If you wanted to do it that way, when you ask is it cleaner, it's perfect if you do it that way. If you refer to this, there's a chance that maybe in the translation something could be different. That's the reason they require an ordinance before you, but I'm comfortable either way because I think this is specific enough to be able to get you there, but it's up to you. You can do it the other way as well. It would be what, just continue it and add the language and then prove it next meeting, September 12th. Is there a rush to get it
down the road here?
Yeah.
So can I make one more comment? I think it's hard for council. I think you're in a kind of a hard position. Now, as a mayor, you represent the whole city, which the council members do too, but you live in a certain vicinity. So therefore, all of those that you hear from are usually around where you live. And so it puts added pressure if most of your neighbors don't want something like this, but yet we aren't elected in districts. We're elected as the whole city. And that makes it difficult in my eye, where a mayor, you're in the whole city, but you don't have any authority, if you know what I mean. Just the comments and from the residents, vary from if it's an agricultural piece of property or if it's a commercial piece of property, and where you guys represent sort of, well, don't represent, but you have input from the citizens and residents that live around you. And like, for instance, yours is agricultural. I get comments all the time about how we've made a mistake on the north side of the city from residents all the time. And I think that this, and just my opinion, I'm not trying to persuade anything, but I think this gives us more of an option to control kind of what we want. Not, I can't say we want, but what the residents kind of are looking for. So I just wanted to add that to you, that I'm very, very impressed with all of you, the way you take this seriously, and you have a difficult, like you just stated, you have a difficult thing to do when everybody that's putting stuff in your ear might totally be against this stuff, but yet the overall view of the city is what you look at. And so I just appreciate all of you taking the time to want a city footprint that goes on till the end of time. So
Mayor, I guess, I look trying to keep engaged 10 years from now, when I'm not here and somebody else on the city council, and they come in and some developer says, I want to pull down this MRO. They have the option to say, not here. They have the option to say here, right? So I guess I've always kind of been a proponent of more options are always better. Just because you have the option to say yes, you have the option to say no. And if it fits here, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, a city council can say, go for it, or they can say no. We're not proposing anything that we're going to do it here right now. So I like the concept. I like the option. And in 2023 or 2024, I don't know how many developers are going to come in and propose this. But in 2030, that might be a really good option for them. Or we may come up with 3 other ordinances by that time anyway. So I like the idea of having that option of and giving future people the option. They can still say no to what we're proposing when a developer offers. So I like the concept. I like the ability it gives us to kind of be in the driver's seat of it. So thank you, Jake.
Mayor, so maybe I'm splitting hairs, but on this 10.15.01 purpose, if you're looking at the first sentence there says the residential overlay zone is intended for infill development. Does that even need to be stated? I mean, that may be I guess maybe that's the intention, but certainly I agree. I think there's going to be times when somebody is going to approach us with something that is not an infill development. It would be more out on the fringe of I guess I'm saying, does that language even need to be there?
I would agree that maybe should be removed based off of where we've moved in the current and previous discussion.
So I have a question for Gary. Does that invoke discrimination if you won't let one developer do this and another one doesn't? Okay.
Your zoning decisions are all individual decisions that you make based, no parcel property like that. Good question.
Steve, I'd add that I think on our part, I look at the process that we've been through and where we started months ago, including the planning commission work, which several of us have had the opportunity to be part of. But I think we have an assignment to educate. If you would say to me a year ago, just higher density, it's not only no, but heck no. But to go through the process, and I would invite anybody that has strong feelings to look at some of the meetings that we've been through and some of the training and some of the education that we've had, and then make a decision. And if we line 10 people up and 8 of them say, yeah, that's not a bad deal, it's probably worth moving ahead on. But that doesn't happen without education, without explaining what it is that it's about. And that's a little bit hard because it is involved for sure. But I think we need to be careful on our part to just say it's all about high density is not correct.
And I would add to that, Dave, that's awesome. That we've all gone through the whole process, but you probably won't hear from the resident until
Sure.
it affects their locality.
Absolutely. But then let's have the discussion. That's where the education
Yeah.
needs to start.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I appreciate what you said and that you all have gone through.
Yeah, no, understood. Everybody hasn't been part of the full
Yeah.
training, the process or education process.
You had something stirring. I saw it, Eric.
Let Tony go, then I'll go.
So do we have anybody that's knocking on our door with this right now? I mean, if we held off and added your amendments to the ordinance and waited till September the 12th, would that be a catastrophe?
We have one. I haven't heard from him in a few months, so he's not pestering me every day. It's been 2 or 3 months. But I do think it would be good now that I'm looking into the memo language and where to fit it in. I think it would be good to come back one more month and you'll see that language in there.
Clean it up.
And the nice thing is I see the general support for the memo language. Now I'll go ahead and put that in. And there are a few things that need to be minor tweaks in terms of text.
So next meeting, no MRO discussion, just a vote.
It's up to you, but it sounds nice.
Yeah. I have to be careful as a mayor to try not to persuade, but how many times do you plow a field?
Depends on what you're doing, Mayor.
Okay,
Depends on the crop you're planting. I can answer that question.
that's where I'm
Am I planting
uneducated.
barley? Every year. Alfalfa, once every 7 years. That's when I plow.
I didn't know that.
Tobacco?
Well, they just got up every year. Soybeans? Yeah, go ahead.
Denise.
You've all read this MRL that I sent out, this ordinance. So would it be helpful if, when I send the new one out, it only underlines the new language?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'd even say, Denise, if you could even go from, it's pretty much this is all in red.
Yeah.
Because it's all brand new. Can we put even the new in black or put it in blue or some other color of text with the language that we modified from Jake? So with all that being said, Mayor.
Well, wait just a sec, and if there's something removed, it's there, but you've striked it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
Eric.
Well, I was gonna say, if I think we need to get this right. So I'll make a motion that we table this, Mayor, until September the 12th. Let's make sure we get this right. So there's my motion. Let's table it till the 12th of September.
Okay, any more discussion or do we have a second?
to add the verbiage. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to table this until, what was September 12th? And a second from Jeffrey.
They did do one last time.
Let's see,
Yeah.
and all vote.
That doesn't have to be a roll call.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that was unanimous.
Thanks, Jake. Well, more.
Thank you.
Process, Jake, you've shown a lot of patience and that's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of stupid questions.
Educate some hard
It's
heads.
almost like every meeting you get beat up and you work through it. You rise above it. So thank
You're
you.
really nice. Trust me, I've been to a lot of diversities. I was yelled at until 12:30 AM in Rexburg last year.
Hmm.
Way better.
We're all asleep. We're all asleep by 11, so you don't have to worry.
Gary's a good guy too.
We appreciate what you do
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
and
It's fun.
drive safe.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jake.
Gary, you're, amen.
We wouldn't notice. Nobody would know.
Hey, I was gonna excuse you as my first update.
Thanks for all you do, both of you.
Yep.
Okay. City Council, is there any report you need to give us or any discussions or?
As long as we're complimenting, thank you, Denise. I mean, we read minutes, one or two at a time, but when when there's that many, it's recognized the work that you put into it. Good night, Gary. Good night.
Mayor,
Yes.
so just might mention, and I'll be very, very brief, that Dave and I attended the UAMPS conference last week. And I found it very informative. I learned quite a lot there and a lot of things that I had not realized. A lot of the discussion had to do with electric vehicles and of course, you know, there's a lot of things going on, particularly in like places like California with EVs and that sort of thing, but discussion on what time of use billing as far as electricity is concerned. Just a lot of things that I learned and a lot of good information there. So I don't want to belabor it and keep you here all night, but Dave, I don't know if you wanted to.
I would just add, before it's over, we will all be using nuclear.
Yeah.
There's over 60 companies right now that are working on a small plant, including some big ones, Westinghouse. and
Westinghouse.
so forth.
And I think Dave and I talked about it because I think we walked away with it feeling that I think we made a fairly wise decision in maybe taking the exit on NewScale, because to Dave's point, we mentioned to each other, I said, I thought NewScale was the only game in town. And you get up there and you see there's what, a dozen or so other companies that are involved in it.
There's a dozen major ones, but there's 60 different entities that are pursuing it, that are putting, time and research into it.
And I think having the electrical rate study done, I think that was, Ty, I think that was very wise to have that done and completed as well. So, but yeah, it was I went up there hoping to learn something and I certainly did. So, because there was a lot I didn't know, but it was a good opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Ty?
So, thanks, Mayor, for doing the ribbon cutting ceremony on the bridge. That was awesome. Well done. Kind of a last minute, on the Wednesday meeting, they said you're gonna have a ribbon cutting. I'm like, are you gonna give me a date and time? So, yeah, they were just sweeping right as we got there. Still cleaning up, but it's kind of fun for short notice fire drill. A lot of people it takes to build a bridge. So,
Justin Smith mentioned just now that he remembers talk of a bridge ever since he was a little kid.
oh, Justin Reese, yeah.
I mean, Reese, yeah, Reese.
Yep. So just some other updates. So we have our summer party, August 29th at 5 PM. Make sure you RSVP. Yes, Denise.
And I need to find out from each of you if you're coming and what you want to eat. There's chicken, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, salad, green beans, or grilled chicken with baked potato. So before you leave, would you let me know?
Okay. Some options there. So thank you.
29th at 6, you say?
5
5 and
Yeah,
where
so-
again?
at the park, Riverside Park. So it's a Tuesday.
So
On
can we
Monday,
take a minute and just do that now? So you aren't rushed at the end?
No, we'll just wait again.
Okay,
See the 29th.
I'll know.
I'll put mine in. That's my 48th anniversary and I won't be there.
Oh, come on. Where would you rather spend?
Free
your
meal,
48th
yeah.
anniversary?
Amen, I agree.
So some of my other updates are just on here that we have the League of Cities and Towns. So make sure you let us know if you'd like to attend that. It's in Salt Lake. We have a job opening right now for a Parks and Cemetery Manager. We'll do, we have a couple applicants. We'll do interviews at the beginning of next week. So it's, we have the same people, just recruiting a little bit more of leadership and management component to the crew that we have. We've, as you know, we've been working a lot on improvement to our parks. This will help on the next step. Plus, it'll we're not just trying to hit the minimum standard that we used to always have. This is to go above and beyond and create new park space and helping the trails and park planning process and the park over by the depot and down by Tractor Supply and we just need a level of engagement in some of the new park areas that we currently don't have the capacity for. So
Ty, I need to interrupt you and I need to take a quick break.
okay.
You can continue talking because you and I have met on this.
Oh yeah.
It's an old guy thing, sorry.
But when we talked about it, you didn't stay awake. I'm just kidding. So then our natural gas project is moving forward. If you remember that $409,000 grant generator for this building. And then we're right now just working on, we need to change the connection for natural gas to feed the generator at this building. And then we have 2 other sites that are going to be plumbed in for natural gas so that we can move those mobile generators and just plumb them straight in and not have to run around and refill generators. So that project's still moving forward. We finished the records room, so the Denise Woods record room established in 2023 is now finished. There's nothing above the door yet, but we'll get something.
Okay, can we name it that?
Sure, we can name it whatever we want. Let's do it.
The Woods Record Room.
Yeah, it's better than backwoods.
That was a good one.
I want to say thanks to Ty
Uh.
for that. That's a major. for the record, the city.
Looks very professional.
Looks great down there.
Looks very professional.
A lot of history.
Entertaining.
Yeah. So the next thing, the stage, Lance is en route right now to pick up the stage. It'll be back on Friday for the concert on Saturday. Oh, I forgot to mention the concert. Concert is Saturday at 6 o'clock in the park. That Jacob Sorensen that did the video, with our Main Street and Depot in it. He'll be here, but,
That's this Friday.
Saturday, the stage will be back on Friday. He left yesterday, but
I forgot
it was,
about that.
oh, he didn't leave till today. Oh, okay. He changed his plan, but anyway, just a lot cheaper to send him out to go pick it up than to have it delivered, because you have to have a half a day training on it before they'll give it to you and so they would have, plus we wouldn't have it in time, so.
Bringing, like Rose said, like 5 or 6 other singers from Nashville. And they plan on playing if there's enough people until 10 o'clock.
Oh, that'll be fun. Good, thank you. Oh, so pass these down. We got a couple of preliminary designs for a new entrance to the city, a little bit lower maintenance. Has a little waterfall feature on it. The other thing is I've asked him to include a digital sign. If you have any other comments or something that you'd like to see, preliminary designs, and I'll bring them for approval before we select one, but just thought one of the digital signs, maybe higher resolution than what we have in front of the city office would be nice, so we can just put city events on it or community events where everyone's always struggling to go put signs in the dirt somewhere. So when we have 4th of July rodeo.
Like
tractor
something
pulls.
similar to South Weber there by
Oh.
Maverick.
Yeah, right there, yeah, by Burley Burger.
That's what we're talking, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, they have it there, they have advertising there. Yeah.
But information on. Good.
okay, yeah. Anyway, so that be incorporated, and then also we'll need something that says Morgan Historic District. Like welcome to Morgan Historic District as well, because that's the grant that's paying for the.
Is this
need review Improvements.
by the planning commission?
Yeah, so they're the advisory board. I'm just giving you kind of a sneak peek so you can, yeah, so you can give me your comments and we can get them incorporated before we take it to the advisory board. Just wanted to update the council on it. So it'll be lower maintenance, but hopefully look a lot better. Water feature.
Yeah, water features, gonna be okay to maintain? Would be a question.
Yeah.
Maintainable.
Yeah, maintainable. There's water there, there's power there. Easier than what we're trying to do, mowing a side hill for sure. It'll just be checked on. So that's the entrance to the city. We already mentioned vehicles that we got 2 new trucks. We're trying to order the next round. The next round is going to be utility trucks from 2019. So they're in a 5-year rotation. We're also ready to surplus a handful of other items. So we'll be pulling together a surplus committee to declare values and processes. And one of those items is our old stage. And I guess the county's interested in that. And so we might want to consider just a direct sell to the county on that to help with the fair. But on the flagpole, we mentioned the flagpole, but we're also gonna there's Christmas tree lights that are made for that flagpole that you can hoist it up and it'll either have rings or spiral or like vertical lighting. And so I'll get concept of those and probably also bring it to the planning commission because that is also on that grant. So at the base of that, we're gonna put Morgan Historic District on a concrete base around the bottom of that flagpole as well.
The original tree died.
Yeah. Mostly dead. We've finished it off.
Got any citizen comments on taking it out?
No,
No, it's dead.
we just I did have somebody comment and say, what are we gonna do now? Put lights on on the flagpole? And I'm like, actually, yes. So.
But I walked out in my backyard and there were some seed rollers out there. There's multiple dead trees out in Riverside Park too, that's gotta come out. They're coming out, they said in the after the next week maybe, or the following. So yeah, there's plenty of dead pine trees around town. That's not the only one that fatality we've had. I don't know if it's beetles, I guess. I don't know what's taking them out.
Life cycle or
Crows, the birds, but there's several more in the Riverside Park that's
well
coming down. Yeah.
Can't discriminate.
Vulture word.
Vicious birds. We'll put it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I also need to acknowledge that we selected City Design, that's Jake's company, to do our downtown area plan. So we had a committee, we had applications. It's a grant that we got with Wasatch Front Regional Council to do our downtown area plan, and they put together the best proposal for sure. Has a whole design team, and he's the project manager. So there's other people on their team, but the Wasatch Front Regional Council is going to help mostly on the trails and park plan, and Jake's going to focus on the downtown area plan, and has also reached out to UDOT to see if we have money to study that the exit. And so if we can do that at the same time, so that it's not just in silos, that we can show this is our plan for our future downtown, and we need to consider the on and off ramps.
Commercial Street in particular?
Uh-huh.
How was that different than where you just did the planter boxes recently? Wasn't that part of a new design?
It's a design, but so this is the new downtown master plan also includes that whole area. So all the way to our sewer ponds. Right. So it's just saying, like, as this develops, we've done some zoning, but we haven't done design plans, so that we can start to look down the road and say, what do we want this to look like in the long run? So one of the ideas is so that we can add commercial without necessarily, killing the heart of the economy, and so we'll see what the outcome is, but the idea is just to get a big plan. The other thing is it prepares us, so if we have a big development come in and want to do several hundred acres at once, that we are prepared to enter into a development agreement and get what it is that we're after. So we'll see what that plan looks like when we turn. Yeah, Tony.
So I brought this up before a few times, in conjunction with the exit.
Mhm.
I still think that there's some validity in taking that frontage road and making it a two-way road.
Sure. Yeah, this came.
For a lot of reasons. It pulls all those rock trucks off of 600 East. It probably would alleviate a little bit of traffic over on the Commercial Street intersection.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems, it used to be.
Yeah, well, this came up in a meeting that I was at the other day, and I kind of brought up that really nothing, like whatever the concept is, nothing's ever going to happen with UDOT without a study.
Right.
So that's where we're starting.
But
Yeah.
can it be on the radar as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
I guess that's my question.
Yeah, if we're doing that, we'll have that planning process includes some open houses and engagement with the public on different concepts, and definitely on that transportation plan. We'll include the RPO in that, and the COG too. So I mean, you can engage in several different ways, so I'll keep you informed on how that's going.
And then can I ask one more question on transportation?
Sure.
I've had actually a few people talk to me about this. Does it make sense to put a three-way stop at the top of State Street over there on North Morgan Hill?
It could, yeah. I'll ask that again from Lance, just to see what the standards are. I know when we switched the other one, we did a study, like a $4,000 study to figure out the traffic pattern stuff, just to make sure we have a basis.
Yeah,
I mean, because you could do 3 and then the next day somebody will say, why this and why not that? And
Just remember, it's hard to stop a loaded truck on that uphill.
I'm not, yeah,
Uphill.
that's not where I'd have the stop sign.
The stop sign
Stop sign
down.
coming from Wilton.
Down, there's not one down and off and one will spill.
Yeah, the hill. there. Because there's a lot of
that-
people that says, I'm afraid one of these days, old habits die hard, and we just don't A lot of people just don't look up that hill, you
Yeah.
know, and
Well,
so,
and where it interacts with the top of State Street, I'm not sure. We'll have to,
no, don't stop those trucks, no.
but I'll ask that question for sure with Lance and we'll look into that. So. Then my last update is also from the UAMPS meetings. When we were up there, we've been going back and forth with one of our solar projects. So they're working on a contract, but it's changed enough that we're gonna have to bring that back. We voted on it once as a council.
One up north.
Yeah, to be part of that. And so I'm just saying in the next meeting, if we finish that agreement, then we're gonna have a turnaround shot clock thing where we need to probably approve it at the next meeting. It's called Still Solar B. It's a solar farm with an option for battery. And what I like about it is it's the second phase of a solar project. So there's efficiencies in all of the infrastructure and connection to the grid. We're only part of B. So that project is gonna take a little bit advantage of the first project, if you want to put it that way. And then the property that's carved out for solar gives UAMPS the option to do our own battery, the land designated for battery. So UAMPS has the option to put battery and dispatch that power at whatever time we want, which makes a lot of sense in solar right now. So that's all my updates.
That was an interesting piece of information I hadn't thought much of either, was the concept of the battery storing that energy for use at a later time.
Yeah, I learned a lot too, by the way, just
You ever heard of iron batteries? But what the size of a semi
yeah,
trailer?
There was may I just make a comment here?
Made out of iron.
So Ty and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was and I don't remember her title. She was from Burbank, California. She had something to do with their
the
their power grid there.
Yeah.
And she was saying that they're putting a bunch of solar panels on rooftops because flat roofs. But what did she say? She said they had 4 acres designated for solar, and it was going to provide 1/4 of 1% of their needed power. I thought, wow, that's 4 acres, and you get 1/4 of 1% of your needed.
That'd be more than the entire Morgan City, wouldn't it? Aren't we less than 4 acres square?
No, 4 miles,
I mean,
or
4
3
miles,
miles, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 acres, it was just one building that was a huge
Oh, acres,
building
not
that
miles. Okay.
the acreage that they're like, because it looks like a big old thing right in the middle of their city, like a 4 acre is a big development, but anyway, it was unreal.
I came home and the next day or two on the news, I was talking about Rocky Mountain Power, and they had plans for a 2,200 megawatt. I can't remember if it was solar or wind, and I thought, that's gotta be huge, doesn't it?
Mhm.
In Morgan?
Not in Morgan, but
No, but that's why they're also pursuing nuclear. It's everything's going in every direction to figure out what's gonna provide the need. Yeah.
Kind of like technology and software at the beginning stages.
Yeah. I could also
Took a
mention,
while to coalesce.
yeah, I could also mention that I signed a letter of support for the school district to apply for a grant for electric buses. And
Need some plugs in, right?
yeah, but so I talked to them about it and they said that they'd be able to charge their buses at night only. And they could run all their routes in the day without charging during the day.
charge at night.
And so we can dispatch the energy at night when we need to, to level that.
Yeah, that was an interesting graph that guy showed up there.
Yeah. And so it's not all bad. I think that's, if they had a handful of electric buses, that's a lot of load, but it can be throttled for overnight charge. And just a continual source of power on it would actually help our system out.
A lot of discussion on time of use billing is
Yeah, we're gonna have to consider something like that soon. But
if you want to do your laundry in the middle of the night, it might not cost you as much.
yep. So anyway, that'll be on the next next meeting. That's all I have, Mayor.
Mayor, I forgot to just report back. Yesterday, we had our COG meeting. And I know Eric, you were our last sucker from the city involved with rec and rec board.
Yes.
There are still some debates, some discussion. So if you're hearing about what's going on with the rec program, the counties, it's a mess, but they're working on some stuff. So we will keep you
I laugh.
updated
Freaking awesome.
through that. Wow. But I hope the county that was there made it from the city, from the school district. There's got to be something done, and I hope we can drive that from the COG perspective. And it was really good. They asked the city, county, the school district, and to be able to hear Ty explain to them, yeah, we've got the McDonald's coming online, you see the project behind Ridley's, the young service center coming along, what's going on over there with Structure Solutions. There are some economic bang coming in for us as well as the county and the school district. And so at COG, they were more impressed with where the city's going than other places. But so thank you for all you're doing. And I don't know what else to say, Mayor, but other than wow. So hopefully the school's poked it with recreation. Keep poking and
Poking the bear.
I don't know.
And I did ask for more money. I forgot to mention that. So the COG had recommended up to $1 million.
$1 million.
For the new local option sales tax that the county collects, that the COG prioritizes. And so I mentioned our total out-of-pocket cost for the bridge, and there's some head nods that I'll bring back another $250,000 to ask for 1.25.
Want to be there next.
So it would be the money that we pull from the bond, and then they would just make that portion of the bond payment over the next 10 years. So we'll see if that happens, but between the county and the school, it looked favorable.
That's good.
I mean, the city and the school.
One last comment. I took a ride up Little Cottonwood Canyon the other day. We went up the Albion Basin, took a hike. So I thought on the way back, I think we need to put a sign as you enter Morgan City on all of our entrances, and we'll just put "Welcome to Morgan City. We ain't got no gondola." So anyway. I don't think people up there want a gondola too bad. We ain't got no gondola.
I think they wanted it in Weber County as it was on the table for a while. Is there any more comments? Okay, let's adjourn this meeting. And I think I got this right, Denise.
We gotta do the.
We have yeah. With
Municipal Building Authority, and then we gotta do the RDA. You can't pack up, Ty.
yeah,
I know, I'm sorry.
Have it out.
okay. Yes,
But this won't take long.
so welcome. Thank you, council, for enduring this, but we'd like to call to order the Municipal Building Authority agenda. And could we have a motion and a second to approve of the meeting's agenda?
I'll make a motion, Mayor, to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 2, the consent agenda. This is to approve the minutes of the MBA of Morgan City on May 9th, the MBA of Morgan City on July 11th, and the MBA Authority of Morgan City on August 8th. Is there any discussion on that, or Has there been anything we need to tweak on that? Are we okay?
Mayor,
Tony?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda for the Municipal Building Authority of Morgan City.
Second.
Okay, and that does A, B, and C.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda of the minutes of the Municipal Building Authority of Morgan, May 9th, July 11th, and August 8th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. And I move that we adjourn.
Yeah, one more.
RDA.
An RDA meeting.
Yeah, now we're looking at an RDA.
But I need to stop.
Yes, you need to stop and